Please let this be an April Fool's joke. 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 Please let this be an April Fool's joke.
Welcome to Allie Meekley, episode 76, the podcast that'll have you saying, why aren't you talking about the thing? Talk about a thing.
What do we have to say? I've been lying in bed most of the time. I've been eating a lot of hearty meals that last for days.
Staring out my window at fast food places like, why won't you feed me? Feed me.
I had a conversation because my sister and her boyfriend walked by our building and she texted me and we were like Romeo and Juliet talking out the window on the street and people were walking by like, can you believe this? Like not as they got way too close to each other. Can you believe this? And then they fell over.
It happened immediately.
We've been accidentally watching all of these virus outbreak movies.
Oh,
like
cool.
Because we have all these movies and we're like, let's watch this one. Oh, it's about a horrific outbreak. Oh,
they didn't take away all the quarantine movies.
No, they did it. The National Guard should take those away.
They should come into our homes and take them away. And as a citizen of this country, I allow that.
I support that. And they can also
fascism.
I don't need to carry a gun, and they can also sleep in my house if they want to. And I won't say anything. I won't say anything about it.
I'll make him tea.
So let's explain for anyone who might be worried and wondering what's that sound quality? Hey, why do I hear birds chirping? Why are there little crickets?
It's the sound of Daniel's heart breaking.
We're recording this. I would say we're like 10 feet apart.
No, we're about like 6 to 8 feet apart.
I say closer to 8 because I'm almost 6 feet. And
wow, weird flex, but okay.
Yeah, you want to see a weird flex? Here I go. We're sitting far apart from each other in I think it's the Van Nuys Sherman Oaks Recreation Park. We're in the middle of a grassy field. A lot of people going around being too close to each other,
playing basketball, taking walks in groups, playing tennis,
kissing each other's fingers.
I say that we were talking very judgmentally, but then there's people playing baseball, and I'm like, ooh, I have a glove in my car.
Do you need a shortstop? And I do mean short because I'm 5'10", but you're not. Flex. So yeah, we're sitting far apart. So if you hear a lot of what's that? Repeat that. What's he saying?
What'd you say?
Whom are you talking to?
I thought you were talking to that dog that walked by you.
But yeah, this is horrible. This is a horrible time.
It's very different.
It's very different.
And
not in a good way.
Nope. And every day is getting progressively worse, and every week is giant leaps of bad.
It is. It's not even weeks. I predict by the time this episode is out, no one will be able to leave their apartment. Yeah. So if you're wondering, like, how come they got to? First of all, we have keys to the city. We can go wherever we want during any sort of situation.
Thanks to our little research we do.
We researched where the keys to the city are, and we did a little research on how to pick locks.
Because we don't have both of those things on the third page of Google web results.
Also, how do you get to the room with the keys to the city without the keys to the city? You need the keys to the city. Anyway, I'm practicing my new stand-up routine. Also,
I'm performing it for no audience. My sleeping wife.
Which is my specialty.
Years of training.
Speaking of nobody listening to us, we had a live show scheduled on April 27th, which is Earth Day, but Earth has rebelled. 22nd.
Yeah, the Earth has rebelled against us, and that's fine. It's about time.
We haven't gotten an official word yet, but I want to say that that's going to be canceled.
Yeah, so we'll keep everyone updated on that.
Which I'm sure is the number one thing people were worried about.
The riots in the streets. No wonder they called the National Guard.
How am I going to get peanut butter and LA Meekley live? National Guard. We'll be enlisted by the National Guard. Jesters. Official jesters.
Official coughing jesters. Oh, they're coughing. It's a bit, right? Oh, his face is turning red. Oh, no.
Cough for me, monkey. Cough for me.
As I eat this turkey leg. That he likes it.
We're having a little contest.
Yeah.
We're doing authors this month, but we're going to have we did a field trip episode with an LA author a few weeks ago before things got horrible.
Yeah, when you could leave the house.
When you were still able to wear pants legally.
When you could buy 3 hand sanitizer bottles at a time in the golden age.
Even then, who could? So that's going to be coming out. So he gave us a signed copy of his book. So we wanted to do a contest to give away that book. So first of all, let's tell you what the book is.
That's why I pointed at you and you nodded to me like an idiot.
I don't have my binoculars. I couldn't see it.
What? Huh?
What are you pointing?
What's that, Sonny? What?
Oh! I can't wait till we gather a crowd here and we get broken.
I know. A crowd of soccer players, of angry soccer players.
Just kicking the ball in the air.
Yeah.
Show-offs. Weird flex, right? Right? They're weird flexing. So the book is 10,000 Steps a Day in LA. It's the second edition. It's by Paul Haddad, and it's signed by him.
Yeah.
This is autographed. So it's a book of different walks you can take around LA, which is a good thing right now. Again, unless the city keeps us all inside by the time this episode comes out. So the contest will be on Instagram or Twitter. Post a picture or video or something of you listening to us during the quarantine. Tag us. Your name will be added to the list. It'll be randomized, and we'll pick a winner in a few weeks. But since I'm not going near anybody in the post office, either if you live in the area, I can drop this off at your front step and then
take a photo with them, right? Right? Take a photo with them?
I set up a quick kissing booth. A kiss for a book. Is that the new contest? If you live nearby, I could drop it off at your doorstep with a little wipe in a bag, and you can wipe it down. Or I could take pictures of the things that you want and send them to you. Or you could just wait until this is over and it's safe to just when you thought it was safe to go back in the post office. Am I right? Son of Sam. So that'll be the contest. Again, on Twitter or Instagram, post a picture or video or something of you listening to us in quarantine. Tag us. You'll be entered to win.
And we'll know if you didn't listen. Yeah. If it's like a picture of our logo taped to your computer screen and you're like, oh, yeah, I listened. Yeah. We'll know.
Because the government took away our computers. Oh, my God, there's butterflies. This is nice. There's butterflies flying around us everywhere.
They're trying to stop us.
Oh, no.
Oh, goodness.
Giant butterflies holding a butterfly net. There's a lot of butterflies. There's a lot of nature out here.
Yeah, I think the monarchs are...
yeah, well, this is America. How about the president butterfly, who I love?
Who's never done a single thing wrong.
Who has never gotten us into a bad situation.
He called it the Chinese virus or whatever. Then he did a news conference and somebody asked him like why are you spreading that kind of thing? It's not the Chinese virus, and you know that. He's like, because it originated in China. Idiot. What a weird person that guy is. Anyways, the monarchs are migrating.
A lot of charm. Yeah, so that's the contest.
I hope to see somebody like me win. Maybe me.
I mean, hey, if nobody else enters.
Yeah.
Oh my God, go away with that.
Not really. That's far enough, It's not necessarily a social distance podcast, but we are.
It's a podcast.
We are keeping a good distance.
Social distancing.
See you later. Have a good walk.
Well, we're infected now.
Yeah.
Our first interruption, wondering what we're doing. Well,
Loving
guess what? Instead of janitors normally interrupting us, now it's sick people, sick park goers.
One day that kid will be janitor, and I applaud him. And I look forward to him and I helping each other out in the future. Because I'll probably also be a janitor after all this,
We'll all be janitors. The only job left will be janitors.
Janitors and Trader Joe's employees.
Also, we have a couple new Patreon people, one returning that we missed out on last time. There's Miguel Amador, and then we have a new one, Madeline Pillar.
Hi.
Peeler?
Spell it.
P-I-L-L-E-R.
I don't know. Pillar.
It's people with these confusing last names.
We look
Not
forward
like me,
to
Daniel Zafran.
Daniel Zach. Every open mic, Daniel Zach. It's never the same mispronunciation. It's always Daniel Zac Efron, and then everyone laughs, and it's the last laugh you hear.
Wait a minute, you're really far away. I didn't hear that last part. Let me go hang out with those social distance fans. Okay, so, hey, what did you do in this past month before we all got shut down?
I'll tell you, just before we all got shut down, I went on a 3-hour walk through Elysian Park, and I put it on our stories, and it was really nice because I'd gone to a lot of places like Leo Pelosi Park in Elysian Park. It's tucked away. It's named after the watercolor artist that I'm a big fan
we've
of.
talked about him in the Angelino Heights
thing. That's right, yeah, because he did a book about Carroll Street and Victorian homes and Bunker Hill. He did about Bunker Hill. But that's a beautiful park, and I walked by Dodger Stadium, which is all closed up, and I heard gunshots from the police academy because they're practicing. And then I'm...
they're practicing.
How many bullets does it take to take down a victim? And then my boyhood best friend picked me up. He saw me walking, which I shouldn't have gotten in the car, but he's like, I'll take you inside Dodger Stadium. And we went.
Real bad idea. I hope it was worth it to see an empty baseball stadium.
It kind of was. I was very sad. What about you? What'd you do? Lock yourself up? Barricade the windows? Put your dresser in front of the front door?
Well, I don't want anything to get through the cracks. God, my stupid building. I told you, but the day after they were like, all right, no, only emergency maintenance. And then the next day, like, we're coming into all of your units to measure your windows.
God, no,
so we told them, no, you're not coming in here.
Yeah.
There's dogs are going to start running up to us now. Are you doing a woof cast? A social woof woof?
Yeah, kinda.
Go away. What I did in the past month before this happened was I went to a restaurant.
What was that like? I can't remember.
What was it like to not eat a bunch of old rice that you had in the back of the cabinet? It was Mofongo's in North Hollywood. It's a Puerto Rican place. And
you're very cultured.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, oh my God, wait, my timer's going off.
Oh, I know.
Wait,
I've been hearing it for like 3 minutes.
Oh, no, I snoozed.
Well, you know what that means. You lose. Did I say losed? You snoozed. You losed.
You snussed. You lost. So I went to Mofongo's. It's Puerto Rican. There's this Puerto Rican virus going around, and it's called the merengue. It's a Puerto Rican place, and they do mofongo, which is it's like mashed up plantains with like bits of chicken crackling in it, so it has it's like chewy but also kind of crunchy, and then they top it with this sauce, and I got fried chicken on top of it. Really good.
That sounds really good.
Really good. And I think they're still open for takeout and whatever most restaurants are doing, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But once this is over, if any restaurant still exists, go there. Very good and really nice people.
I always thought that I would never experience something like the day that Prohibition ended, like the celebration in the streets, but I think that when this is done, we're all going to meet at an Applebee's and freak out.
Can you believe I can order scampi again?
I'm going to be shaking everybody's hands. And hear me out. After this is all done, I'm never washing my hands again. I've washed the top layer of skin off my knuckles, and it's
you look like
like a boxer.
I was going to say you look like the Invisible Man, but what he would look like without bandages, which is just invisible. He looks like nothing.
I think we should start.
We have a listener question.
Okay, hit me with it.
I haven't told you about this one, but it's a stupid one. It's from A. Martco on Instagram. You know him.
I do know him.
Yo, Alex, one of the groomsmen at my wedding.
Handsome guy.
His question.
Strong hands.
I'll never find those again. I'll never be able to experience those.
I've been thinking about those strong hands this whole time. Like, God.
So his question is, why does Daniel put fries in his pocket? This is a personal question.
Can I answer it?
Yeah.
Because you're an old man. Because you're a weird old man who likes to play chess in the park, and I'm going to need these cold potato slices later.
No, I record podcasts in the park. And yes, I will need these cold potato slices later. Mofongos, plantain slices now. I don't think apparently this is weird, because several people have pointed it out before. I don't do it that much anymore, but I know that I've walked into Staples Center with a pocket full of French fries from the pantry.
That's like an old 20s lyric about you.
This is
a pocket full of French fries.
This is the new update to the pocket full of Posies Plague song for the quarantine. Pocket full of French fries, it's worth two in the bush. I don't do it as much, but if I'm going somewhere, I know that one time, and this even now I recognize was crazy. You and I went to see a movie a long, long time ago, and I put a hot dog in my pocket.
The movie was There Will Be Blood.
It was There Will Be Blood.
Yeah. And you were like, they're not going to let me in with this, and I don't want to eat it now. Like, I wolfed mine down before the movie, I think. And you're like, I want to eat it and watch the movie. I want to watch this 3-hour-long dry commentary about greed.
I think that this movie's going to be about hot dogs.
I think the blood is a metaphor for chili.
Ketchup. I think it might be ketchup. That's weird that I put a whole hot dog in my pocket. But
and you
just
couldn't
French
be
fries.
Talked down.
No, I refuse. Much like all these people in the park, I will not be told what to do by the National Guard. That was crazy. But if you wrap up some French fries in a napkin and put it in your pocket, sneak into the Staples Center, you'll be fine.
This is like you were caught embezzling and you're just trying to defend it. Like, it's okay. I was trying to build a school for needy children. I was trying to build an orphanage. Like, this is like the same level of defense. And you haven't even told people the whole story. You just jumped right into defending yourself, which is pretty guilty.
Look, fries in the pocket. That's like Ernest Hemingway's 5-word story. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. It's called an Orson Welles, for those who don't know.
No, the hot dog in the pocket was the Orson Welles. The hot dog in the stomach was the Orson Welles. So you didn't even wait for, because those pants even fit pockets. But look, you make fun of me for saving my food back then. Where are you now? I'm not sharing my.
You don't know the next time you're going to get a French fry, do you?
Good luck getting anything in your pocket these days.
Do you have French fries in your pocket right now? Be honest.
I have toilet paper.
Answer straightforward.
I'm all about toilet paper now.
Do you have pockets in your? Do you have pockets in your French fries right now? Do you have French fries in your pocket right now?
I don't, but I have mints and a Tums.
Empty your pockets.
No.
Empty your pockets.
No, the National Guard is not here. I'm not emptying my pockets. Let's really get into the episode now.
Now it feels like you getting into the episode is a diversion.
No, it's okay. Just keep talking. Oh, wait. Do you have any mustard in your pocket?
What a weird combi you are. Do you have mayonnaise in your pocket so I can eat with my not French fries? With my medicinal potatoes?
Let's get into the actual episode. This isn't about who has what in their pockets. Nobody has anything in their pockets.
How tall who is?
Look, I'm just as confused as to why it smells like Fuddruckers in this park so strongly.
Oh, they closed the Fuddruckers, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they?
Why was it open for so long is a better question.
So this month we're going to be talking about authors. We're thinking about like an outbreak sort of thing, but we've already done the plague outbreak twice, and I don't think there's anything else to be said.
I'm sure that the 1918 Spanish flu swept through the LA area, but I'm so sick of reading about flu sweeping through areas. I kind of wanted to take a break.
Yeah, and what a break we had with...
What? What, huh?
With 4 authors of Los Angeles. That's
4
what we're authors of Los Angeles.
Pulp authors of Los Angeles.
Yeah. We didn't know that going in. That wasn't our goal.
Yeah.
But once we all were drawn to who we wanted to do, we're like, oh, this is all just comic book stuff.
Yeah, I
comic
had my
book without pictures.
I had my gal, and I wanted you to do one, and then you were like, well, what about these 2? And then we're like, well, if we don't do it, then we're stupid. And then it turned out they're all pulp writers.
Yeah. Let's get into
Walk
it.
us through the first one.
All right, so this first one is the man whose name is almost the name of something on a menu at a Mexican restaurant. Edgar Rice Burroughs. Oh, this made me so hungry to...
Type rice over and over?
I caught you in a loophole. You didn't ask me if there was a burrito in my pocket, you idiot. You stupid idiot.
Damn it. I'm only allowed to ask 3 questions. I have to pick one food item.
And now you have to wander the desert for 20 years without any hand sanitizer.
Why wouldn't it have been a burrito? Why wouldn't it? I should have picked burrito.
To keep in mind for this story, I don't know about your people, but I learned from this. I don't know about you
Describe
people.
my facial expression when you said that.
You made as if I had just said the word Mexican restaurant very enunciatedly, much like Donald Trump.
Mexican.
Because the burrito came from Mexico. I don't know about the authors you covered, but mine, it turned out authors are not successful. Like, none of mine were like, oh, I grew up and I wanted to be an author. Like, these were all unsuccessful people that that had to write because that was all they had to do.
I didn't necessarily have that, but I'm interested in you telling the story.
Okay, so keep this in mind. Edgar Rice Burrito was a failure who didn't know what he ever wanted to do with his life.
Cool.
So for most of his life, that is. He was born September 1st, 1875 in Chicago, but his life was constant moving and restarting, like all the time. As a kid, he changed school 6 times.
Oof.
Here's where we talk about diseases, usually due to disease outbreaks. So the next Edgar Rice Burrito is coming. So one time during a diphtheria epidemic, he got moved into the only private school in his neighborhood, which was an all-girls school.
Hey, Edgarina. What?
You want to come shake my hand? I've got diphtheria. Then in 1891, influenza outbreak hit Chicago, so he left the state completely and went to live on his brother's cattle farm in Idaho, and then met cow disease. With school being a bust, like you're not gonna learn school in Idaho, which is what the sign says when you drive in.
Schoolin's for Nevada.
You want to learn something? Get to South Dakota.
Can I pet that dog?
While he was in Idaho, he basically became a cowboy on his brother's farm, an emphasis on boy because he was like 15 years old, and he spent most of his time with other cowboys and murderers because this was just it was a year after Idaho actually became a state, so it was still the Wild West.
It was basically Australia.
Yeah, it was Australia now. We always, even in an outbreak, we're still finding made up ways to make fun of Australia.
I'll be like my dying breath, like, what about Australia?
Goodbye. So he spent about half a year here in Idaho, but a war started brewing between the cow people and the sheep people.
Say that sentence again. Slow.
A war started brewing between the cow people and the sheep people, which led to his first story. The cow people versus the sheep people, which is ridiculous. Even for Idaho,
that there's a separation between the two, right?
Yeah, no, it was 2 different. Like his brother was part of the cow people, and then whoever else was part of the sheep people.
I wouldn't think about being a sheep people.
That's gross. I'll be here with this cow.
Moo moo.
Not ba-ba. Moo moo. His parents didn't want him being a part of that world anymore, so they sent him back to school to Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. He failed at this and was expelled. So then he went to Michigan Military Academy in Orchard Lake, where he tried to drop out in his first year. The cows, they call me. They wouldn't let him, so he stuck on, and he managed to become a trick rider there and an ace shot.
What's a trick rider?
Like what you were telling me your grandpa did with ropes, but like I assume that like he would be on a horse doing rope tricks, or maybe he made the...
Oh, I see.
I don't know, maybe he was prostituting horses.
Or a rider.
Rider, not writer. No.
Rider.
He was not writing. He was never a writer. He was always a writer.
I've already established that. He was a writer, though.
He graduated from this 1895, and he was hired as a teacher because he had applied to get into West Point, and he failed to get in. So now he had no idea what to do with his life, so teaching... I'll just do that. Why not?
Those who can't write.
Those who can't ride, join the sheep people. Teaching, it turned out, was also not his thing. So after a year, he decided to join the military. And thinking he could advance really quickly if he did something really heroic, he requested to be placed in the most dangerous place he could. So he was rejected by the Rough Riders, which was it Teddy Roosevelt?
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt's Bang Bang Shoot.
His Bang Bang Shoot Club. His trick riders that overtook Cuba. So he was rejected by the Rough Riders. He ended up being placed in the 7th U.S. Cavalry, which was Custer's cavalry,
Whoa.
but this was post-Custer.
Okay. No Custard cavalry.
Not Custard, Custer, not Ryder.
Got it.
Wait a minute.
It's Custard, isn't it?
I've got custard in my pocket. I'm sorry. I've been holding out on you. So he was stationed at Fort Grant in Arizona, where he said his job was to chase the Apaches.
And once you caught them, sir?
Well, here's the thing. He said, I chased a good many Apaches, but fortunately for me, I never caught up with any of them. He would have been killed immediately.
Yeah, they would have made a toy of killing you.
So in reality, he was mostly just digging ditches and patrols, where I don't think he actually saw any Apache, but this didn't work out for him either, because while he was there, he found out he had a heart murmur, which prevented him from being promoted any further in the military. So he had his rich Civil War veteran of a daddy pull some strings, and he got him discharged in 1897. So he's constantly plugging, looking like, all right, am I going to make money here?
This is the thing.
Yeah, this is it. I think I can make money doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, golly, no.
Oh, no, it's hard. Now he decided to try his luck again in Idaho, where the war was over.
Yeah.
Sheep bodies everywhere.
School's burning all the time.
School is out forever in Idaho. The sheep people and the cow people made up their differences.
Yeah.
Is there another alarm? I feel like I keep hearing alarms. If you hear my alarm go off again,
I'll signal you.
yeah, just come and tap me on the shoulder and then give me a quick nibble on the cheek.
If you could whisper lovingly into my ear that
Into
your
my
alarm is
nose?
going off.
Can you just breathe in my nose when my alarm's going?
National Guardman, will you tell Daniel that his alarm is going off?
Shoot. So he's back to Idaho, and now he was trying all sorts of businesses. All of them failed. Every single one. He ran a stationery store, a dry goods store. He was an accountant. He did some more cow stuff. None of it worked. So in 1899, he moved back to Chicago, where he went to work at his daddy's company, the American Battery Company. And that's not battery like assault and battery like what I have in my pockets right now. I actually do have batteries in my pockets.
They're like potato batteries.
During this time, he met and married a woman named Emma Centenia Holbert.
Okay.
But by
Is that 3 women or what?
Oh, no.
It was Idaho.
There's no I in marriage in Idaho. There is us. Us to hoe.
I'm avoiding a hoe joke, so I want you to
Like
appreciate
HOE?
my class.
By 1903,
Ew.
he got bored of working in batteries. So they moved once again to Idaho. They're always going back to Idaho, where he worked at the Swester Burroughs Mining Company. I think he started with his brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, as a gold miner with his brothers. So he was a gold miner with his brothers, and then you're going to like this. He was a railway cop.
What? Like a bull?
What?
Not a bull.
Yeah,
a
now
bull.
I'm really confused. What's a bull?
A bull is a guy who
A bull is a guy who can't.
he like watches a rail yard and makes sure that nobody's hopping on.
That must have been him. He was bully, whatever you're talking
He
about.
could not be a bull, but yeah. So
Or he
he's
was
a railroad cop. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's a railroad cop for
cop.
the Oregon Short Line Railroad Company in Salt Lake City.
Did he watch the station or he was on the train as it was moving? Because that's different.
Listen, Greg, there's a pandemic going on. You think I had time to go to Salt Lake City like I always do to get information?
It doesn't matter.
I don't
Go
know.
ahead.
They didn't go into details because I don't think he talked a lot about this part of his life because it was constant failure. So
right.
why would
He probably shot a guy and was like, can't do this.
Then he got bored again and moved back to Chicago, where he ran the stenographic department at Sears.
At where?
Sears.
Not being shut closed with a fire instrument.
Which
the
they would use
department
to
store.
brand
the
their
cows.
bulls, but not the cop who worked at the railway. He was also an ad man at Burroughs and Dentzer, again,
Okay.
a company he must have started, an office manager at a physicians cooperative, a door-to-door salesman at the State Burroughs Company, a manager at the System Service Bureau, a snake oil salesman selling an alcohol cure.
Were like job fairs like buffets back then? Like
I
you
don't
just
think-
show up like, okay, I guess you could try everything.
Look, you make the joke of, did you circle it in the newspaper?
Oh yeah.
Which I believe I wrote for you.
Oh,
but
God.
it must have just been like, hey, need a job? Come here and you have one.
I have a long resume. It's not for this though. It's for literally everything else.
What's your experience? Well, I served under Custer, not the ice cream. I was a bull, not the animal. So then finally, by 1911, he had failed at so many things and still didn't know what he was meant to do with his life.
Yeah.
He applied to the Chinese army, the army from China. So he applied to fight in the Chinese army. You guessed it, he was rejected once
No.
again.
Why? Because he's not Chinese?
Look, I'll use my limited Chinese. They told him booyah. Booyah, Lao Wai. So then he moved on to his next job, running the ad department for a pencil sharpener company.
Jeez.
I mean, this is so many people's lives of like people who want to get rich quick, or just like people who, I don't know, but like
Are not skilled at anything and have
Yeah.
no ambition other than to just like
Make money.
have an ambition.
Yeah. So he was 35 years old. And I mean, Could you even imagine? Could you
not having a stable job at 35? Can you imagine how
sitting in the park with his much younger and taller friend,
pockets full of French fries?
Allegedly. So he was 35 years old. He had a pregnant wife and 2 kids already, Joan and John, and eventually Holbert was the other kid. These crazy names. So no money, dead-end job, no prospects. He was pawning jewelry just to get by.
Wow.
He pawn, not like the chess game that I'm crushing you at
right now.
So
only pawns left, by the way. That's my move. Is I let you kill royalty, and then I take you over with the pawn.
I have a special rule where everything jumps over the pawns. I give up my queen. I give up my king.
I have a special rule where I pocket some of Greg's.
So his life needed to change, and by that I mean he needed money and no more dead-end jobs, but he didn't know how. He didn't know how to do this. Part of his duties at the pencil sharpener company was that he had to make sure his ads were properly placed in the magazines they were printed in, and these were mostly pulp, sci-fi sorts of magazines.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of downtime at his job, so with all these magazines that are around, he started reading them, and it hit him. He said,
I could fail at this now.
He said, if people were paid for writing rot such as I read in some of those magazines, I could write stories just as rotten. Yeah, exactly.
What a Ramones philosophy of
I could do bad all by myself.
I could be bad but better.
I could do good bad. Writing wasn't completely new to him because just for fun, he would make up poems and fantasy stories to tell his children and his nieces and
He also wrote tricks too.
Greg, do I need to get the homonym dictionary out? Because I have that in my pocket. I got a huge pocket.
A big pocket.
I just wear a pocket with 2 leg holes in it. They're mahout pants, really. But he never did anything that he seriously thought about. Just I'll write this stupid thing and tell it to my stupid kids. Knowing that writing was a potential revenue stream that he hadn't attempted before, he thought, I'm going to give this a try. So to try to maximize his chances, he decided to center his story around something that was very popular at the time, influenza, Mars.
Okay.
They had just discovered canals on Mars, so it was a big topic of interest.
I feel like of the 4 writers we're going to talk about, 3 of them were maybe obsessed with Mars. I don't know if yours is obsessed with Mars. My 2 are for sure obsessed with Mars.
He was definitely obsessed with Mars.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. This story he wrote half of a story. It was called Under the Moons of Mars.
Okay.
So he covered not just the moon, but also Mars.
Yeah.
Where he introduced his first major contribution to the world, the character of John Carter.
Right.
A Confederate soldier who got teleported to Mars by the sheer power of his racism.
What am I going to do with all this racism?
Whoa. What are you people? I hate you.
I don't like the cut of your jib or the color of your skin.
Mostly both.
What do you believe? I bet it's stupid.
You're not Jewish, are you? So many people consider this story to be the inspiration for Superman. That racist guy. By the way, I don't know if John Carter was racist, but he was a Confederate. I've never read a John Carter story, but come on, a Confederate soldier gets...
He doesn't just flip a switch.
I mean, travel does enlighten you, so maybe if you really travel.
God, to enslave Mars.
To
become rich off the backs of Martians.
People consider, like I was saying, they consider this to be the inspiration for Superman.
Yeah.
Because, a guy goes to another planet, becomes like a savior, basically, which this Superman came out 26 years after this. 26 years. So he sent this half of a story to the editor of All Story magazine to ask if this was into this sort of thing. So he asked...
Depends who wrote it. Oh, jeez.
So he asked if this was the sort of thing that this magazine would buy, and if he said no to him, that would have been the end of his writing career. He's like, all right, can't make money. I'm going to go, maybe I can sell water balloons.
Yeah.
So fortunately, the guy said, it has potential, but if you finish it, I'll buy it from you. So he did. He finished the story. Under the Moons of Mars came out serialized in the February to July 1912 issues of All Story magazine. He got paid $400.
Oh, wow.
And when it was published as a book later, it was called A Princess of Mars. That was considered to be a major turning point for science fiction.
Really?
So he has a hit right off the bat.
Yeah.
His first thing he ever wrote seriously.
He must have not known how to respond to that. He must have sat alone for a long time.
I'm doing well at my job.
We're going to give you $400. We can't wait to see what you come up with next. Are you firing me?
Is that my severance package? Because my next job is going to be something in construction. So it's not only crazy that a writer's first thing is like a huge hit, but a writer who had failed at so much stuff is now doing well. So
which seems to be like every writer since then has followed that model.
Every single writer has been greatly successful right off the bat. So now it's time for a second one. For his next story, he really wanted to write a historical fiction tale set in Old England.
With a Confederate soldier.
Robert E. Lee got transported to jolly old England. Not so jolly anymore now, is it? So the magazine editors were like, no, give us pulp. We want space. We want weird stuff. He wrote another space thing called Deja Thoris, Martian Princess, which he felt was so weird that he was worried his publisher would think he was insane. So he sent it in under the fake name Normal Bean.
Say the name again.
Normal Bean.
Wow.
As in, my brain's normal.
It's Bean. Don't check me.
Don't you dare send me to a doctor. So he eventually changed it to Norman Bean. And then at one point he also used John Tyler McCullough for some, I don't know what sort of, what's that pun?
It's almost like, oh, yeah, Normal Bean's a joke. My name is, the name that you just said that I don't remember.
John Tyler McCullough. Oh, no.
That's
John
a normal name too, right?
No, John Tyler McCullough's popular and no one wants Edgar Rice.
I'm John Paul Jones.
I'm Davy Jones. So that was the name for this second story. So now for his third one, he wanted to do something a little different. Something closer to home than Mars, but still different and exotic from a place that might as well have been Mars for him on how likely it was he had ever been there.
Just past Idaho.
Anywhere outside of Salt Lake City, Idaho, or Chicago.
Where?
Africa.
Okay.
Mother Africa. In the October 1912 issue of All Story, which was just 3 months after the Mars story wrapped up its run, he had his new serial, Tarzan of the Apes.
Was this at all influenced by...
They just discovered canals in Africa.
Yeah, and they're just like, dude, we got it. What could be in there?
Yeah, it must have been Africa in the news, and he's like, I could do that. So he sold this one for $700,
cool.
And even more so than the Mars story, this one was huge.
Yeah.
So they shopped this one around as a book, but for some reason people kept saying no until 1914 when it finally came out as a book, and this thing blew up like nothing had ever blown up before.
Right. This was the Beatlemania of the, 20s or?
Teens.
Teens,
the early teens. Yeah, it was, everyone had their Tarzan wigs on, which they kind of did.
They would literally drop a book on the ground, and it would just girls screaming at it.
Yeah.
Crying, yeah.
So people bought this story up like they had an ape man deficiency. Like it was toilet paper during a coronavirus outbreak. Hey.
Am I right? Oh, boy.
Oh, let me eat these
I haven't washed my butt in 9 days.
Which is barely longer than I normally do. So he wrote sequels to Tarzan. In all, there were 24 sequels to Tarzan.
Are you going to at some point talk about... You'll probably get to you reading Tarzan, right?
No, I didn't, but we could talk about it.
Okay.
The ending of Tarzan made me cry. Like,
yeah, you were like shook up a little bit.
It was... Okay, so here's the thing, which I kind of get to a little bit later. His books are so readable because they were serials. So it's like every 3 chapters will basically end with like a cliffhanger or this huge plot point, and you'll want to keep reading because that's how Pulp works.
And that's what makes Pulp so wonderful and accessible, is that it's not weighed down by describing the decorative arches of like the columns of a building. It's just like we're here and we go and we're here.
We'll kind of get into what is art a little bit later, but like this isn't, like I'm not reading like Henry David Thoreau who's describing a winter for 40 pages. This is so readable, and we'll get into the problematic nature of Tarzan.
Yeah, for sure.
But the story of it is so...
People like what we're doing. Hi.
Tarzan
fans.
By the way, there's people coming up behind you also. This is making me so nervous.
Yeah.
What was I talking about before?
We were talking about art versus
all of
Pulp.
our fans found us. There was so much snuck into that story that was so much more heartbreaking than I ever expected from Tarzan.
You kind of just thought like he bangs his chest and you're Jane and I'm Tarzan.
Exactly, which I was fully prepared for. If that's all the book was, I would have been happy, but there was so much more to it. It's understandable why this became so popular, because it had a little bit more going for it than like the story of the killer.
How dare you? Were you taken aback reading about, having read Tarzan, having felt something by Tarzan, and then reading how he failed at everything? Were you like...
No, I kind of like that, because with both of my authors, maybe this is just hope for myself of like, he didn't write his first thing till he was 35.
Yeah, and he ate it for a long time in his life, and he thought that was the end. And then on a lark was like, I can write about an ape man.
It kind of was a little bit disheartening of like, oh, you were only doing this for money. I don't know if you enjoyed this, but you could do this and you could make money off of this, which is kind of like, oh, but where's the, like, who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah.
And you found an audience, and the audience is still talking about you.
Good.
And it's good.
So,
that James M. Cain hated, I think he hated all of his pulp stories, but that's all anyone wanted to read. Like, no one remembers anything he wrote other than that.
Yeah, I like that more so than a writer who's too precious about the craft, which is a great pulp story. Okay, so this was a huge hit. There were Tarzan costumes, there were Tarzan bathing suits, there was Tarzan ice cream, Tarzan toilet paper, which
it's just leaves.
I can't bear myself to open that package. It's a collector's item.
Yeah, I'll just take a bunch of showers.
Just leaves, old leaves. So there was a daily Tarzan comic strip in newspapers worldwide. There was a Tarzan radio show that starred his daughter Joan as Jane.
Really?
With her husband playing Tarzan.
Oh, that's great. They didn't put it on.
What do you mean?
They weren't like broadcasting out of their house. They found like 2 people randomly.
During the epidemic they were.
They were in a park every week.
And they recorded. They were 6 feet apart.
In some area of the valley. I don't know what it's called though.
Hey, be quiet. Ooh, a topless man is walking by. Let's just ogle all the people.
I know. Whoa! Like a Tex Avery character just hitting my head with a mallet.
So this was the first fictional character to...
What?
Sorry, there's an airplane. Sorry, people aren't respecting the rules of travel right now.
That's how far I need you to be away from me is helicopter distance.
So this was the first fictional character to really become a branded sensation like this. It was pre-Zorro, and like I said, it was decades before Superman. So this was the first big thing.
Yeah.
Biggest of all were the movies. The first attempt at a movie of Burroughs stuff was 1970's The Lady and the Lion by the Selig Polyscope Company, which are two things that will never be remembered. Also, when I read 1917, I was thinking about the movie, like what was going on in the movie 1917, and then meanwhile in Hollywood, The Lady and the Lion by the Selig Polyscope Company.
Are you sure this lion skin thing fits me well?
Don't mind that face paint. Sure, it's offensive, but it's also toxic.
This won't be offensive till we're dead.
Which will be soon. But the first Tarzan movie was a 1918 silent by the National Film Corporation of America starring Elmo Lincoln, which was Abraham Lincoln's forgotten son. More of a puppet than a son. It premiered on Broadway in downtown Los Angeles and became the first movie ever to make $1 million.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so the talkie versions, they made so many of these movies. The talkie versions were starring Olympian Johnny Weissmuller, who we've talked about in the 30s through the 40s. In all, they've made 41 Tarzan movies, which Burroughs hated.
He hated all the movies? Or
Very
he hated
quickly,
that they were making
very
movies?
quickly. Okay, the man who's doing this just for money is not going to hate that they're making movies.
True.
But I think, the first he was on board for a little bit, but like after a while he started hating it.
Yeah.
There were 57 Tarzan TV episodes also so far.
Yeah.
Once my pilot gets sold, there will be 57
Tarzan
and a
in New
half.
York?
Tarzan during the coronavirus, which is all I've been working on. So what this meant for Burroughs was that his new job was a full-time writer, and his money problems were over for now. Right. With all this new money lying around and all these TV, movie things and radio shows being made in Los Angeles, he figures, why not? Why am I not living in Los Angeles?
Cut off the middleman, which is Idaho.
Cut off the middleman, which is a game we used to play in Idaho when we would butcher the sheep people.
Today, as the middleman, oh no, my name was pulled from a bag of rocks.
Yeah, because they didn't have paper. Idiots. You Idaho idiot. You're almost as stupid as the people from Australia. This happened in 1919 when he bought 550 acres of land in the San Fernando Valley from none other than our old friend of the LA Times, Harrison Gray Otis.
You're kidding.
That's who he bought the land for. This land was
You're that Tarzan guy? I hate it.
I believe he's a commie. This land was in the hills above the southern end of what is now Reseda Boulevard, and under Otis it was called Rancho del Cabrillo. With his enormous mansion on the property, the house was called Miraflores, which is how Dracula would say it, I guess.
Rancho de Dracula.
Rancho de Dracula. So under Burroughs, it would be renamed in honor of where all this money came from. John Carter of Mars Ranch. No. Come on.
Right,
you just took
yokes.
I'm yoking. I'm making a yoke. Yeah. It was Tarzana Ranch.
Yeah.
So it cost.
Never heard of it.
It cost him $125,000, which is an insane number both then and today, but for different reasons. And it was worth it. The property went all the way up the hill. Basically, it like kind of stretched into Malibu. Like this was a massive amount of land. There were gardens, and it was also like all done for him because Otis had made it all. So it was like,
you just step right up. Yeah, it's fully furnished.
Step right up. There were gardens, orchards, horses, pigs, cows. No sheep. Chickens.
Clearly, lines were drawn in the sand a long time ago.
I'll be goddamn rootin' tootin' hell if there's a sheep in my property. All of them were branded with a Tarzan symbol.
You're kidding.
So they knew that what the property was. Ow.
So it's more of a King Kong brand.
It also said that there were registered goats, which I assume means goats that had to go door to door when they moved in to tell all their neighbors that they were goats. I don't know what they meant by that.
I hate to disturb you, and this is very uncomfortable, but I'm a goat. I'm going to probably eat everything around you. So
I can't live within 30 feet of a haystack. So the house itself had 20 rooms, including a ballroom, a huge library, and a dining hall. Every Friday, he'd invite the staff who worked on the estate and all of his neighbors to come over to watch a movie. And about 200 people would come every single week to watch a movie in Edgar Rice Burroughs' house.
That's a party.
That's a party, which I was reading that the way we think of things today, like, that's not safe. Like, we can't do that.
That's not safe. I'm dying to go to one of these parties now.
That would be so cool.
If you're somebody who has a giant home with a library and a dance hall inside, have me and Daniel over. Have me and Daniel, but he won't come.
What? No, sorry, it's the distance. What the hell? The hell are you saying to me?
I'd fight you if I didn't die from doing it.
If it wasn't against the WHO standards, I would punch you right in the mall right now. Eventually, he built a second house on Mecca Avenue there. He ride his horses around the property every morning, and he genuinely loved this place. He said, it took God millions of years to get Tarzan and me together, and I have to give him credit for pulling off at least one very successful job. I believe this is one of the loveliest spots in the world. He even wrote a... Don't you dare make a joke about... If you make a joke about Tarzan right now...
He would know about unsuccessful jobs. It's not a joke about Tarzana.
It's a joke about the people who live in Tarzana. He even wrote a song about it called My Own Tarzana Ranch.
Really, sing it for us.
It went a little something like this. Hang on. Can you give me an A?
You got your A. You got your A.
Pine no more, my lassie, and my little lad be gay, which also means something completely different right now. For we're going back to our own Tarzana Ranch. To our own Tarzana Ranch far away.
Wow.
But he wasn't a songwriter.
Stick to the...
And he was barely a pulp writer.
Stick to the jungle, buddy.
They've got fun and games, not songs. In 1933, he was even elected mayor of Malibu, which
really?
I really hope it was an honorary title. He even let his news setting seep into his writing. He wrote something called The Girl from Hollywood, about a girl who leaves her small town just outside Hollywood to make it big in pictures and ends up losing touch with her family completely in the seediness and darkness of Los Angeles. And this was written way before Raymond Chandler laid down the law of who could write about seedy Los Angeles. Like he
Little Girls Lost.
Before Raymond Chandler writing all of his poems to Tarzana. Yeah, that's right. I downgraded it to poem. He even started to seep into the city around him. When in 1927, plans were put in place to build a post office in his part of the valley, but to do that, they needed an official name for that part of town. Originally, it was going to be called Runnymede, but there was already a Runnymede in Northern California, so to avoid confusion, they were going by Runnymede 2. Even runnier. For a while, they were going by that, but a group of locals started a petition to rename the area after their most prized citizen and his property, which was named after his prized creation, John Carter Wood. I mean Tarzan. So the petition went through, and on July 20th, 1928, they officially voted to rename that part of the valley Tarzana. Not everyone was on board with this. The Tarzana Library for years refused to carry any of his books because they dismissed it as pulp.
Really?
A library. A library in the 30s before there were...
Before they had equal information?
Yeah. Libraries back then were just like ways for rich people to get maps of things. The Encino Tarzana Library now has a special Edgar Rice... I'll post a picture I took of it.
Is your hand sanitizer okay? It's not spilling out?
Oh, no. That's like $20 worth that just oozed out. It's okay. I'll just take the dirt home. The dirt's sanitary now. In 1936, some residents even started a petition of their own to rename the city to something classier, but nobody takes down Tarzan, so the name stuck. But back in the early 20s on the ranch, Burroughs, he was his happiest here than he had ever been in his life until he wasn't. He failed at being happy. Also, some people just can't escape their money troubles no matter how much money they make. So on March 26, 1923, he did something that was unheard of for authors at the time, and he turned himself into a corporation.
Oh, wow.
He started Edgar Rice Burroughs, Inc., to publish his own books and also manage all of his merchandise and the rights to his works for movies, TV, and radio.
It seems like a good move, right?
Well, people thought at the time this was insane because he was doing this. They felt churning out all these different types of media and merchandise that he ended up doing, the movies, the ice cream. It would end up competing against himself and dilute his success in writing. As we already discussed, these people could not have been more wrong. This is what most authors do now. So he was way ahead of everybody in doing this. This was just a way to protect his money and make more money, which was dumb. It was a new job. It was dumb according to the critics. Problem was, even with all this money, old Burroughs still liked buying horses, cars, and alcohol.
Right.
So in an attempt to get more money, in 1922, he started selling off parts of his property to be subdivided into new plots of land. So he sold 50 acres from where Tarzana Drive is down to Ventura Boulevard between Avenida Oriente and Mecca, which made room for 63 businesses and 139 homes.
Wow.
This was followed by even more the next year. They were marketing the area as the gateway to the sea. And I don't know how you get to the sea from there.
The gateway to the sea.
The ads read that these new plots were an artistic colony on high-class residential acres open to all who expressed artistic desires through the medium of picture, flowers, or vegetables, furniture, drug, plumbing, poetry, or the screen, but artists in each his own field, and each a lover of the beautiful. Chosen by Edgar Rice Burroughs, author of the Tarzan stories, Tarzana is the pride of the beautiful San Fernando Valley. Say it. Go. I dare you. Say it.
You know it is.
So nice of you to say. Do you know that you can buy one of these acres for $1,500, the price of a city lot in the poor district? So this didn't work, so he had some guy dressed as Tarzan getting people to buy stuff instead.
Did that work?
It worked a little bit, and if you wanted a plot of land, you would literally send a check or an envelope full of cash to Edgar Rice Burroughs' office, and you'd be a landowner. Like, that's all it took. That office was at 18354 Ventura Boulevard. It's still there as the headquarters of the Burroughs Company, where they run the trademark on Tarzan, and they sue everyone.
That's still out here?
It's right across the street from, fittingly, the Black Bear Diner, where the sugar mill is. It's right across the street.
Is it?
It's there. I want to go there, and I dare them to sue me. I dare you.
I dare them to kick me out.
I'm going to make another George of the Jungle. I dare you to sue me.
You're trespassing my heart with your Tarzan stories.
How about I sue you for making me embarrassed in front of my macho friends? But his money troubles weren't getting any better, so in 1924, his family moved out of the old Otis Manor and into that smaller house they had built so they could use the manor as the clubhouse for the El Caballero country club that he built on the property for even more income. So then this whole tenuous situation came crashing down with, you guessed it, the Depression.
Boy.
What were you going to say? A big ape?
Kinda. All of this came crashing down when King Kong came on the scene. I always compare Tarzan and King Kong. They're like, oh, do you know each other? I always think that. Do you know each other?
Cross paths?
Yeah.
Did you go to college together?
Like when King Kong emerges from the gate, I want to turn Tarzan like, you know about this? You didn't say anything?
You didn't stop this?
You didn't stop this from happening?
You didn't kill him when he was a kid? Burroughs had invested heavily in the stock market, and he lost most of that during the crash.
Okay.
Then the country club went bankrupt, but he still had to pay the mortgage on it, so he lost the property, and the property was turned into a public golf course called the Tarzana Golf Course, which is now once again known as El Caballero. So we could, if they didn't keep people like us out, we could go golf there.
Waiting for a membership to come in the mail, in the meekly mail.
The next thing he lost was his wife in 1934.
Oh, boy.
Not like that, though. They got divorced.
So she's in a better place.
Beverly Hills. So he could remarry a woman half his age. Florence Gilbert Holt, who was the ex-wife of one of the actors from the Tarzan movie. And then they moved to Beverly Hills. So now with the family he had fought so hard for dissolved, he finally sold off what remained of Tarzana Ranch for good in the late 30s for $30,000 and moved with his new wife to Hawaii.
Whoa.
The safest place to be at the outbreak of World War II. Oh no, Pearl Harbor. Burroughs decides after Pearl Harbor to take it upon himself to provide his worth once more to the military and help America win the war.
Okay.
He started with divorcing his new young wife. And then he joined... You're welcome, Uncle Sam. Are you single?
That, Heinrich Himmler.
Then he joined up as the oldest war correspondent in the country, and he did reports on the troops in the Pacific.
Really?
Yeah. So apparently he also covered the Marion Parker murder for the Hearst newspapers when that happened.
Little Marion Parker.
So he had experienced newspapers writing a little bit.
Yeah. Trying to keep your fries warm by stuffing old pages into your lap.
I don't want them to blow away because who knows what's on them. And I'm going to self-immolate after this. This is the kindling.
I'm any message from Mission Impossible.
I'm a movie by the Coen brothers. But that old heart of his started acting up again, and after a series of heart attacks, he had to come home from war.
Oh, that's right. He had a murmur.
Yeah.
A murmur. A moo-moo.
He's got a heart moo-moo. That's probably what the physician from 1890 Arizona Territory Cavalry...
A heart moo-moo.
Sorry, but you got a heart moo-moo. You got to go home now. He had to come home, not anywhere else to do. He went back to as closest to his precious Tarzana as he could. Not so precious Encino.
Oh, yeah.
Because he didn't have the house there, so he couldn't buy land of Tarzana. So.
And Encino Man hadn't been made yet, so it wasn't hip.
Isn't that funny that that's kind of an ape thing?
Yep.
Huh.
He's a caveman. If you want me to give my 4-hour criticism on Encino Man, the film.
If you want me to read my thesis on Encino Man relating to Tarzan and how we really live. A Daniel Zaffron thesis. He continued his writing here, and he even used some of his wartime experience in his work such as Tarzan and the Foreign Legion.
Oh my God.
He became a little...
Suit up, Tarzan.
Put on your most lethal loincloth. He became a little cantankerous in his later days, referring to himself as OB, which people assumed was Old Burroughs, but it was actually Old Bastard.
Whoa.
He wrote in 1948, 52 years ago, an army doctor gave me 6 months to live, and I'll bet the goddamn old drunk has been dead for 20 years.
Get him. That'll show a guy who tried to help me.
That'll show that doctor who saved your life. But not long after that old heart of his finally caught up with him, and on March 19th, 1950, he died of a heart attack in bed reading the Sunny Funny pages.
Poor guy.
In Encino.
He was laughing so hard at like Little Nemo or
Family Circus.
Yeah. The old Family Circus.
His ashes were spread under the walnut tree in front of his Ventura Boulevard office. Edgar Rice Burroughs' legacy, though he's not entirely as popular now as he once was, can't be understated.
Oh, yeah.
His His book sold over 100 million copies. It was printed in 56 languages. At the height of his popularity, his paperback books accounted for 3% of all the paperback sales in the country.
Wow.
Making him the most read American author of the first half of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And it was easy to see why, because like I said, they're so easy to read. Ray Bradbury thought that he was the most important author of the 20th century, and even Jane Goodall was such a fan that she was jealous when Tarzan married Jane instead of her.
The other Jane.
I'm more qualified. I'm the obvious choice.
Yeah, I've been writing papers for years.
He was prolific. He was crazy prolific. He wrote almost 100 things, including, I believe, 68 books, not including an unfinished Tarzan book that they found after he died. And he created 3 massive franchises. There was John Carter, there was Tarzan, and then he also did a whole Hollow Earth Pellucidar series, which was also very popular and scientifically factual. He also became the first person to do crossovers, when he once had Tarzan visit the Hollow Earth of Pellucidar.
That's pretty funny.
It's pronounced. Yeah,
and all of this came from him wanting to, like,
make
if
money.
I write weird enough,
they'll pay me. In his prime, he was writing an average of 3 books a year.
Damn, that's hard.
He kept a ledger to keep track of how many words he wrote during a day to make sure he met his deadlines, and he was writing about 10 to 12 new pages every single day. His theory was, if you write one story, it may be bad. If you write 100 stories, you have the odds in your favor.
Yeah.
He did all of this for his family.
Right.
If he hadn't started being paid for writing these stories, he would have just moved on to find something else that would. And this all became sort of a local family business. His son John illustrated the books eventually. His daughter played Jane, like I said.
Yeah.
His grandkids went to CSUN. So it was a local sort of enterprise. And the city values him right back. They unveiled the Tarzan stamp at the Tarzana post office,
right,
which you and I once went to a long time ago, and there was all that. We're like, why is all this Tarzan stuff?
Right.
And one lady turned around and she's like, Tarzan lived here.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember being scolded by somebody at the post office. I couldn't remember. I didn't know that it was.
Yeah, she was mortally wounded that we didn't know that Edgar Rice Burroughs lived in Tarzana.
And what's her name?
Make the connection.
Jane Burroughs.
The main strip of Ventura that runs through Tarzana was named the Safari Walk in 1998. He also has a crater on Mars named after him.
Really?
Which I would literally kill for. But you can't discuss Edgar Rice Burroughs without the controversies. Anytime a white author writes something in the early 1900s that takes place in Africa, you know you're in for something.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What is this, a cat in an H.P. Lovecraft story?
What?
Do you know what the cat's name is?
No, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, awful. Anyways, go ahead.
There were some not so flattering portrayals of Africans in the books, and even deeper than that, the idea of a white guy born of British nobility that grows up in the to rule the jungles of Africa is very sticky, but also very of the time. This isn't more racist than the accepted level of racism at the time, which is to say it's still racist. You know, like it's not
trying harder to be the most racist thing.
Exactly. He wasn't H.P. Lovecraft. But it also didn't help that this was around the time of white flight and all the racial housing covenants. So knowing that he was like, people like Mars, I'm going to write about Mars. Yeah. Like you can't help but feel like something seeped in. Like you kind of knew a little bit about what you meant by all this. On a less important level, the book was also controversial amongst anthropologists who felt that a man who could swing around trees like that could never have been raised by apes. That's ridiculous. He must have been raised by orangutans. Get it right.
Get it right, guy who's just doing this for money and did a little research.
Yeah. Get it right, the guy who probably never even saw a chimp. The man himself was also pretty conservative. He was very outspoken against Japanese internment, but he was also very pro-eugenics, which apparently most people were at the time, which means it's right. The only reason he didn't have sympathy for the Nazis was because he hated Germans so much. But putting all that aside, if you can, you can't deny the impact he's made on pop culture. Like I was saying, you can dismiss Pulp, as a lot of people do, but name one thing that T.S. Eliot wrote. Yeah. Even if you can, name one person who has actually read it and enjoyed it. Everybody knows Edgar Rice Burroughs' most famous creation, and you probably even hear the roar in your head when you hear that name.
Yeah.
John Carter of Mars. Yeah, that's Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Well, you started us.
It's my lips are getting cold, and it's kind of hard to enunciate.
I have to pee
things.
so bad.
I'm starving. I haven't eaten since Mofongo.
You started us off really well because we're going to talk about two people.
Come on. This whole audience that gathered 6 feet away from us. Do you all agree?
You don't agree? You're here for fries in the pocket.
You smell the french fries. You're not humans. You're a bunch of dogs that got loose.
The next two people I want to talk about are incredibly influenced by Edgar Rice Burroughs and Tarzan and John Carter. First one we're going to talk about is somebody I've mentioned a couple times in previous episodes, and I've always wanted to concentrate on her if we ever got to a writer episode, and here we are. Let me talk about Leigh Brackett.
I always wanted to talk about her if we were in a lockdown quarantine situation.
Pull the cord. It's happening. This segment's going to be called Sincerely Muscles. We'll get to it.
I thought we were done with Tarzan, but okay.
Leigh Brackett was born on December 7th, 1915, a day that will live long before Pearl Harbor was attacked. She's a hometown hero, born and raised in Santa Monica, and an address I cannot find for the life of me. She was raised by her mother.
Back then?
What?
Did they have addresses back then?
Yeah, you're by the rock. You're 2 houses down from the rock.
Do you live on beach or road?
She was raised by her mother, Margaret, and her maternal grandparents after her dad died of the flu pandemic of 1919 that swept the globe.
2 authors so far affected by this, seriously.
Her family moved around the country quite a bit before...
Who said we're not topical?
Who said they're not relevant?
Who said they're not funny?
Crowd? You're jeering us.
Who said that they're calling the police?
Her family moved around the country quite a bit before settling down in Los Angeles. I can't even find out whereabouts. Like, her early years are kind of like the same 5 things over and over, but I can't find where they lived. I know that she at some point lived when she was pretty young in Pasadena, not far from the home of Howard Hawks. I don't even know if he was living there at the time, though. Like Burroughs, she moved around quite a bit. Her education was not stable.
Authors are dumb. We know that.
We know that, right? Her moment comes when she's 8 years old, when someone gives her a copy of Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Gods of Mars, and she says,
wow.
I was never the same after that. Suddenly, I became aware of other worlds out there, and then, from that time on, I was destined to be a science fiction writer.
I've already, me, as Edgar Rice Burroughs, have already influenced both of your people. Take that. What the hell have you done for me?
I guess I'll be reading your research now?
I'm not touching that paper.
Come on, touch it. Shake my hand. Shake my hand.
Don't stop being rude and shake my hand.
I did a good job. Shake my hand. She attended a private girls' school in Santa Monica and was by all accounts...
Just like Edgar Rice Burroughs.
That's how she knew him.
They were dual prom queens.
She was by all accounts a tomboy. She was tall, she was rebellious, and she was athletic. All the things you need to be a pulp action hero. She excelled at volleyball.
Androgynous.
Her most tomboy characteristic was reading books meant for boys, like the works of Robert E. Howard, who created Conan, C.L. Moore, who I didn't know was a female until I started doing research, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and H. Rider Haggard.
Haggard?
Haggard. Haggard.
Oh, like Merle Haggard.
Like Merle Haggard, yeah.
Merle Haggard's his little boy.
She was a lifelong fan of science fiction, and much of her fiction was born out of her love of Tarzan and John Carter stories. She was so excited by these stories that she began, of course, writing her own amazing stories around the age of 13. Another influence was the theater program at her school, where she was introduced to plays, and from what I could tell, was writing them and watching them performed. She declined as
Gumption.
What?
Gumption.
She declined a college scholarship.
How many times are you going to have to say what?
What? She declined this college scholarship because she knew it was going to be too pricey for her family to handle. But she kept writing and submitting stories to the Pulp sci-fi magazine she was poring over. Again, the exact timeline of how and what years her career started going are hard to trace, but I'm going to try to do my best, and feel free to correct me if you know the biography of Leigh Brackett. Her grandfather was a great support to her in getting her to sell her stories first, who seems to be the only family member who supported her writing science fiction. A lot of people were like, why don't you write for Ladies' Home Journal? She's like, I don't read it, and if I did, I wouldn't be able to write for them. But they pay well, so I wish I could.
Do they publish stories about little green aliens?
I have a story about a fist that comes to life on its own. Does Ladies' Home Journal... Will they take that? But another big help came from a fellow writer. She was attending writing courses taught by a well-known author writing self-help books, Lawrence D'Orsay, himself a writer of stories that frequently ended up in literary magazines like Weird Tales. D'Orsay had his own literary agency, D'Orsay Agency, and at some point, a man working at D'Orsay Agency comes across her manuscript, and he finds it in the bad pile, and he saves it. This is up-and-coming writer Henry Kutner, who I've mentioned on this podcast a couple times before. Not a spectacular writer, but a great haver of ideas.
Never heard of him.
We've even based like a creepy Christmas Hanukkah intro on Graveyard Rats, which is his big one.
No, that was me. That was
all
original.
Me, baby. I hold him up there with Charles Beaumont. Like, his writing isn't anything spectacular, but the ideas you're reading are like, oh, this is frightening and upsetting.
This would make a good 30-minute TV show.
It might.
Occasionally would make a good 30-minute TV show.
Anyways, Kutner saved Brackett's stories from being rejected. He saw her what Brackett called limping efforts at sci-fi and fantasy and wrote her. On his own time, he wrote her and gave her a long and detailed criticism of her story, which I would have cried.
That doesn't sound like a man to do to a woman.
Here's what you should do with the punchline.
Unwarranted critique of something she worked really hard on.
This peer support out of nowhere must have fueled her to keep going at a time when most writers are feeling really worthless. He helped her get an agent, which was, of course, his own agent. But the biggest influence he had on Brackett, though, other than critiquing her stories, was introducing her to The Gang. Robert Heinlein, Forrest Ackerman,
They jumped her in.
Julia Shorts, Jack Williamson, Edmund Hamilton, and the fellow new kid on the block, a guy just out of high school, Ray Bradbury, and the many, many others of the Los Angeles Science Fantasy Society. This year was 1939. She was 24 years old, and Leigh Brackett found her people. She quickly joined their ranks, both spiritually and officially joining the group.
She spiritually paid her membership dues, which was a big bowl of Jell-O for everybody from Clifton's.
Which is just free limeade, apparently. This dude doesn't like a cut of our jib. Informal.
Now, that's the look of a fan.
A far away.
A faraway glare who's
kind of
walking,
like a vulture.
Strutting very slowly in circles around us. I like him. I want to shake his hand.
What's your name, sir? She also would frequently join an informal, unofficial group that would meet at Robert Heinlein's home on Lookout Mountain up Laurel Canyon in the Hollywood Hills, close to Houdini's mansion at 8777 Lookout Mountain. The group was called the Manana Literary Society, and they would just like have fun and drinks at his house and go over stories and talk pulp with fans and writers.
Did they ever go to Edgar Rice Burroughs' house for a movie? They're not that far.
Why not? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were close enough. That's the thing. I never read, like, oh, they must have met Burroughs at some point, but
well, he was, I mean, at that point, that's like, we're doing open mic comedy. Certainly we'll run into Jerry Seinfeld. And we'll just, he'll invite us over.
That's true, though.
Which is the dream. Which is the dream.
He comes out of the bathroom. I need to go in the bathroom. We have that weird, like, who's going to go first?
And then we both go in the bathroom.
He's helping me write jokes.
Suddenly, it's a mirror in the bathroom situation.
The next year, her first short story, Martian Quest, was published in Astounding Science Fiction in their February issue. This was followed by The Treasure of Patukuth in the same publication, Astounding Magazine. Between 1940 and 1943, she pumped out a series of short stories that would be published in Planet Stories, Startling Stories, and Super Science Fiction. Stories, fiction stories, story fictions,
book stories, magazine, the magazine,
short stories,
science, the fiction,
short story, long stories, the stories,
short story, long story short.
They were said to be like simple, almost forgettable, but her writing continues at this point to get better, and it all leads to a short story she wrote in 1944 for the spring issue of Thrilling Wonder Stories called The Veil of Astalar.
I wish we could keep a tally of the stupid names we've gone over so far.
Oh, for sure.
Like John Carter.
Imagine, like, I got a name for a stupid publication that I'm sure isn't taken, and you say it like, that's taken. Oh, I gotta be
that was written 4 different times by 8 different famous writers. But also, what a stupid name Tarzan is. Like, it's such a common name to us now, but, like, imagine when it first came out. Like, what? People must have been like this. What?
Why can't his name be like Adam? He's the first man.
How about instead of Tarzan and Jane, Adam and Jane?
Am I right? Crowd over there, they're walking away.
Am I right? Crowd of eugenic supporters.
So The Veil of Astalar was like, it was her first change in like ability. Like it was markedly different, well written, and significantly different space opera. That was what she was really good at, was something called space operas.
Interesting.
Her skill at handling.
I wonder if that skill set will come in handy.
Probably not. Her skill at handling space operas and planetary romances will come into play later. Oh, you must have read my.
I wonder if that. Wait, what
sentence will come into later.
Wait, the echo delay.
That's funny. Things were looking up, and her friends group seemed to be the exact support system she needed in her life. She was dating fellow sci-fi writer Edmund World Wrecker Hamilton. He was nicknamed that because in every story at the last chapter, Earth would be saved. Very last chapter. And every Sunday, Leigh Brackett would meet the new kid, Ray Bradbury, at Muscle Beach at the volleyball court in Venice, and the two would critique each other's stories about her at Muscle Beach.
Wait a minute. Why there?
Oh, because she would frequently play volleyball at Muscle Beach.
Okay.
And so she would make him go there. I think he was in, I forgot what area he was in.
And that's how Ray Bradbury got so ripped?
You've heard that story, right?
You've seen the montage, right?
You've seen the Top Gun montage, right? But except it was Leigh Brackett and Ray Bradbury. About her at Muscle Beach.
He was preparing for the apocalypses he was so afraid of.
She was a swimming instructor there as well, and Bradbury once saw her playing volleyball with the men during World War II. She would send postcards out to Bradbury signed Muscles. She was the real deal. Fans of these genre magazines took an almost instant liking to Leigh Brackett's stories, but readers would often mistake her for a him due to the gender-neutral name. The editor, Joseph Campbell, started a letter column of an issue with a bold headline, "The Leigh in Leigh Brackett is feminine." And you wouldn't believe the responses.
Believe it.
Nobody cared because they were just such a big fan of how good she was.
Yeah. Did they?
Yeah, no, they really did. Some publication did that annoying thing. I don't know if it's annoying or if it's great, but they would make a point of being like, "What are you doing?"
My foot is itchy, and I'm wearing very big boots, and I don't want to interrupt the show, so I'm clicking my heels together to scratch my foot.
I just want to go home so bad.
There's no place like quarantine. There's no place like quarantine.
A lot of publications would do that annoying thing. I don't know if it's annoying or great, but like, can you believe the writer of these incredibly imaginary, visionary stories is a woman? Like, it sucks because obviously.
Where'd she find the time between menstruating and breastfeeding?
Yeah, and cleaning the kitchen. But like, her name is getting out there more because of this. And like, girls or women or boys who look up to women like me, they look out there and they see a female figure doing this. They're like, oh, I could probably do it.
Pervert.
When she stops getting printed as frequently due to other job opportunities that we'll get to, readers send letters to pulp magazines asking, when will Leigh Brackett come back? And when was, in capital letters, bring back Brackett. So she was popular. People really liked her.
Written with cutout letters from different magazines.
I swear to God, if you don't bring her back right now.
I have her. Bring her back.
Bring her back. At the same time, she started also writing pulp mystery and hard-boiled crime stories between 1943 and 1945.
She's like the bridge between all of our authors.
She kind of is, yeah. She's kind of like the John Carter of both these worlds, huh? She's something of a Confederate soldier on Mars.
She's like our, I'm trying to think of another Southern general, and it's good that I can't. Keep going.
Between 43 and 45, she writes about 8 short stories for small mystery publications like New Detective and Thrilling Detective. Her first full-length novel was published in 1944, and it was a crime one, No Good from a Corpse. And other than the screenplays she's known for, this is one of the 2 books that define her. Some people disagree, some people strongly agree that Brackett had a thing for dialogue that many other writers at her level didn't have, and in particular could write fantastically accurate dialogue from men, which she learned from studying characters like old drunk William Faulkner, old drunk Ernest Hemingway, old drunk Dashiell Hammett, and the granddaddy of all the old drunks, Raymond Chandler. Her first novel is said to be cut from the Chandler mold, which is both a praise and a putdown. But it's that book, No Good from a Corpse, that moves her into the next phase of her career. Leigh Brackett was with the Myron Selznick agency, Myron being the brother of David O. Selznick, the Hollywood producer, and her agent was Hugh King. Of the strength of her novel, King was able to shoehorn Brackett into a job as a screenwriter for a horror film called The Vampire's Ghost at Republic Pictures. As Brackett said, they decided to cash in on the Universal Monsters School, and I had been doing science fiction, and to them it all looked the same, bug-eyed monsters, so she got hired. She then got another job the next year writing the screenplay for a movie called Crime Doctor's Manhunt, which was directed by William Castle.
It has to be just like a bucket of words here, a bucket of words there, you got science fiction.
You have 3 dice with words, and you roll it. Red, planets,
glasses.
Ghost. Yeah.
The glasses from Planet Ghost.
It was directed by William Castle, of course, and the cast included William Frawley.
Really?
Yeah. But someone working for Howard Hawks was buying up little to unknown pulp novels and came across No Good for a Corpse, which they then passed on to Hawks. Hawks found it to be really impressive, so he gets his secretary to call this Brackett fellow. So Howard Hawks is on the phone.
And make sure he's wearing a jock strap.
Tell him to put his penis on the phone. So he pretty much is like, tell that guy Brackett to come over here, and she shows up.
Meet me in the men's room.
Yeah. Are you Brackett, secretary? And she's like, Mrs. Brackett, I'm Leigh Brackett, the writer. And he's like, well, okay. But he's like, fine, whatever. I just need you to do this new project. Hawks sought Brackett because he was adapting Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep for the big screen. But there's a problem. At the time that she was hired to write the first legitimate and big job of her life, she was also neck deep in a sci-fi story with an upcoming deadline that needed to be finished for Planet Stories called Lorelei of the Red Mist. She had written the line, then it was gone, and the immediate menace of the foreground took all of Stark's attention. Now, Howard Hawks and The Big Sleep stood in the way of her finishing it. She didn't quite know what to do, but then it flashed. She would turn to her friend and mentee for help, so she goes to Ray Bradbury and asks him if he could finish this story for her.
These are wait a minute. She went to Ray Bradbury to finish The Big Sleep?
No.
Oh, the other one.
The story she was writing, Lorelei of the Red Mist.
Okay.
She has to finish that. She has a deadline, so she goes to Ray Bradbury. It's like, can you finish this story? So he agreed. Bradbury added the following sentence to hers. He saw the flock herded by more of the golden hounds. He then continued and finished Lorelei of the Red Mist in 10 days. What exists is a collaborative story, a half and half between 2 of the biggest names in pulp sci-fi history. His work allowed her to move on to a bigger collaboration. On this project, not only would she be working with Howard Hawks and Humphrey Bogart and drunk Raymond Chandler, but on the writing team was the drunk William Faulkner, which we covered
for The Big Sleep.
For The Big Sleep.
This is crazy. This is like the perfect storm of
if you want to know
writers who don't want to be there.
Yeah, I know. With all of these drunks. And then Leigh Brackett. What was that like? She answered for a book of interviews called Backstory to Interviews with Screenwriters of the 40s and 50s. This is what she says. I went to the studio the first day and absolutely appalled. I've been writing pulp stories for about 3 years, and here's William Faulkner, who was one of the great literary lights of the day. And how am I going to work with him? What have I got to offer, as it were? This was quickly resolved because I walked into the office. Faulkner came out of the office with the big sleep, and he put it down and said, I have worked out what we're going to do. We're going to do alternate sections. I will do these chapters, and you will do those chapters. And that was the way it had been done. He went back into his office, and I didn't see him again. So the collaboration was quite simple. I never saw what he did, and he never saw what I did. We just turned our stuff into hucks. I think everybody got very confused. It's a very confusing book if you sit down and tear it apart. When you read it from page, this is still her talking.
We'll get into that also with the flaws in Raymond Chandler.
Yeah. When you read it from page to I'm quoting her still. When you read it from page to page, it moves so beautifully that you don't care. But when you start tearing it apart to see what makes it tick, it becomes unglued. Owen Taylor, I believe, was the name of the chauffeur. I was down on set one day, and Bogart came up to me and said, who killed Owen Taylor? And I said, I don't know. Who got hold of William Faulkner? And he said, well, I don't know. So we sent a wire to Chandler. He sent another back and said, I don't know.
I have that same story.
Do you?
Yeah, I'll tell you the other side. I'll tell you what he was doing at home.
At home, when he got the wire, it was like, who the hell's Owen Taylor? Is that a president?
What's a chauffeur?
So there they were. The movie was a huge success, but I always felt like both Brackett and Faulkner never got enough credit for adapting it.
Is this still Brackett talking?
No, this is me talking. I feel like it's always like a weird fact. Like, did you know William Faulkner and Leigh Brackett?
That's pretty crazy. And it also, like, that system of, like, you know, you do in school, like, you write a sentence, and I'll write a sentence, and then you'll write a sentence. Like, that never turns into a good story.
No, that's the way group projects are done.
Exactly.
It was a joke for a lot of years that he walked over and ripped the book in half and said, this is your part. But, like, it wasn't far off.
He must have been at Muscle Beach. It used to be Author Beach. It used to be Writer Beach, but it was confused with Ride, like Ride the Waves, Write the Waves. And then all the authors got ripped.
The whole generation, right? Hemingway. And maybe that's just about it. They never got enough credit for adapting it. With an emphasis, I mean that on Brackett. The dialogue in the movie is snappy, and not all the credit can go to Chandler, and certainly less to Faulkner. Brackett said, one day, Humphrey Bogart came over to me with a manuscript and asked if I had written the cues. I said no, and he said, they cannot be said. I'm not going to do an impression of him. You see, William Faulkner, this is her still talking. You see, William Faulkner wrote wonderful...
This broad talks a lot.
I mean, like, get back in the whatever, right?
Get back in the writer's room.
You see, William Faulkner
Get back in the president's office.
William Faulkner wrote wonderful Faulkner dialogues, but they were not written to be uttered. Faulkner went down in history as a screenwriter whose every single line was rewritten in Hollywood. If you want to hear about Faulkner's miserable time in Hollywood, you can go back and listen to our episode Hollywood and Bust, an episode where I managed to mispronounce everything.
Hollywood or Bust, not Hollywood and Bust.
I thought it was Hollywood and Bust.
Why would it be Hollywood and Bust?
Because they went and they still busted.
Hollywood or Bust. I'm pretty sure. Let's just shake hands on this.
Come over.
Okay.
Meet me in the middle.
I freaking dare you. That almost sounds like a dream team of... Are there two people looking at your car right now? No, it was two old people. The perspective, there's two people crouched far from your car, but the forced perspective.
Right here. Look at me.
Look at me. I'm the old man now. That almost sounds like the dream team of, like, we could get metaphors from William Faulkner. We could get dialogue from Raymond Chandler.
Yeah.
We could get plot points from Leigh Brackett.
Yeah.
And then we can get drinks from...
We can get drinks from Raymond Chandler's office. We can get girls from Howard Hawks' catalog of women. I like The Big Sleep. I probably enjoy it more than The Maltese Falcon, but The Maltese Falcon is probably a better movie. But I don't hear any... I guess I haven't read enough Faulkner other than a couple of short stories to, like, oh, that's a Faulkner line. I can kind of hear some snappy stuff from Brackett, but I always attribute it to Chandler, so it's hard to tell where the lines divide.
That's why collaboration is bad.
Yeah, because you
don't get all the credit.
I want capitalism, not communism.
I'm in this for me.
Raymond Chandler is said to have visited the studio and was very pleased with the job Leigh Brackett had done with his novel, but a union strike put the brakes on a lot of productions that summer, and Leigh Brackett would have to hold off on writing another screenplay for Hawks for the time being because there's no more scriptwriting stuff available. It should also be said the same year, 1946, New Year's Eve, Leigh Brackett and Edmund Hamilton get married. Their best man is Ray Bradbury. From that point on, Edmund and Leigh live half in an alley apartment.
You're my Ray Bradbury.
What?
You're my Ray Bradbury.
I'm your Ray Bradbury. Edmund and Leigh live half in LA in their apartment and half on his family's ranch in Kinsman, Ohio. Ugh. They later in life left the LA apartment and moved to Lancaster. After The Big Sleep and the strike, Brackett returned to her space novels. The rest of her career would be moving between screenplays and genre novels and some more short stories. Her next big story comes in 1951 with The Black Amazon of Mars, which is the most easily accessible of her books. Accessible meaning you could find it for free online everywhere. Not accessible, though, in, like, plot, and the story starts off like right in the middle, like someone's dying, the names are like impronounceable. If you're into it, you're into it. If you struggle with reading pulp sci-fi that's like deep sci-fi, it can be kind of a fight. But she writes really imaginary stuff.
I've never seen any of her books anywhere at all.
I sell a lot of them online, like through Overdrive and stuff, but at the last bookstore they have like a nice shelf of her stuff that I'll buy like a couple every once in a while.
Well, they'll be out of business by the time this is out, so I'll never read it.
It certainly was the last bookstore. Got him. Oh, got us.
Got the economy.
Yeah. She keeps writing novels: Shadow Over Mars, The Starman, Alpha Centauri, or Die, and possibly her best-known novels are The Long Tomorrow and The Sword of Rhiannon. Her novel, The Big Jump, I read maybe 6 months ago, and I loved it. It's like pulp macho stuff with space. She writes dialogue so tough and so snappy. As snappy as Hammond and Chandler. And the end doesn't land well, but if you read Chandler, you're already accustomed to that. So it's just
you
that
don't
in
expect an ending.
space. Like The Big Jump, I really enjoyed. There's something about The Big Jump where a guy is going to go to... Okay, so The Big Jump basically is about this spacecraft got farther than any spacecraft could. It made this jump like light speed. It made this jump, and this guy went, and spacecraft came back without anybody on it, and a friend. It's a relationship that's really weird because they're kind of friends, but they're kind of not. But he wants to go rescue the guy anyways, like almost on principle. Like, he saved my life, and I have to do the same for him. Like like the relationships are really good. Anyways, The Big Jump.
This book will never be on shelves again. So.
I lend my copy to everybody.
That I see what you. That's good.
I'm clever, huh? Her best-known reoccurring character, a character that's synonymous with her if you're a deep-cut sci-fi reader, is Eric John Stark, who is Tarzan meets Conan, but on Mars. Stark is an Earthman raised by native Mercurians. Okay. If you're from Mercury, you're Mercurian. Yeah. After his real Earth parents...
I don't know that.
After his real Earth parents die when a cave collapses, the tribe that raises him gets destroyed by a group of human miners who imprison him, and he is rescued and raised by a police officer. His upbringing and experiences make him aware of the injustices that native planetary species deal with, and he helps to fight against colonization and genocide.
That's much deeper than... hey, at least she's fighting genocide.
Yeah, she's not John Carter. Because he spent so much time on Mars. I went to a talk at LAPL about 9 years ago. I think it was 2012, ripe of maybe a few months before I moved to Chico, and there was a guy, I cannot find any programming about it, but he gave a whole lecture on pulp sci-fi. So he introduced me to Henry Kutner and Leigh Brackett. I got a better idea of Leigh Brackett. But here's the thing. He went into each story and gave what was really interesting about it. And the interesting thing about Eric John Stark is that because he spent so much time on Mars... What?
Isn't that a Game of Thrones... I think that's the fifth what. Isn't that a Game of Thrones name? John Stark?
Yeah. You got to sue George R.
Who's already being sued by J.R.R.
Tolkien, yeah.
Who's already being sued by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Who's being sued by a broken train.
He's still being hunted down by the sheep people.
Because Eric John Stark spends so much time on Mars, his skin is a dark, deep black as his hair. To this, I say hell yeah. A lot of ice castles and
Wait a minute, but there's only white people from the south on Mars.
Oh, not Mars. Oh, Mercury. No, Eric John Stark of Mars, or John Carter of Mars. I'm getting them all confused.
They're all the same. This is why people don't respect pulp stuff, is because they all turn into the same thing.
She continues through the 50s and 60s. What?
Which is... Nothing.
Thank you. This is a good... I can hear you. I'm trying to make a point to shut up. She continues through all the 50s and 60s writing tales about Eric John Stark and Mars and the Skaith. She eventually was called back by Howard Hawks, who had her under a contract for 2 more scripts, but that wasn't the only reason he called her, though. Hawks admired her.
Oh, no.
He said that they shared the same literary taste. She was sophisticated. She dressed in somewhat outdoorsy manner, which he liked, and more importantly, her understanding of comradeship, both in fiction and in life, and her ability to create tough-talking dames. That's everything that Hawks loved. So he just loved having her around. He respected her work, which was the most important thing. In 1957, there's no but other than he would pay her less than he would min. In 1957, she started to write Rio Bravo with Jules Firth. That's the John Wayne, Ricky Nelson, Dean Martin Western. His liking for Brackett did not translate well into the banks, like I said. Jules Firth was paid $2,500 a week, and he hated to put anything down on paper. And Brackett, who busted her ass writing, got paid $600 a week. She also worked on Hatari and went criminally underpaid for that, too. She also wrote the original screenplay for El Dorado and said it was one of the best things she had ever written, but Hawks changed key points in it. She did uncredited and writing and rewriting for the Rock Hudson movie, Man's Favorite Sport, which I watched 20 minutes of.
I can tell you man's favorite sport for Rock Hudson.
It's, man.
The most dangerous sport and
man.
my favorite sport.
I watched 20 minutes of it, and I've been dying to rewatch it, but I can't find it anywhere. She also wrote Rio Lobo, The Gold of the Seven Saints, and a few other movies through the 60s and 70s. But let's get to her last couple big things. 1973, Philip Marlowe has one more case for her when Robert Altman asked her to create a screenplay for The Long Goodbye starring Elliot Gould. Adapting this one would prove to be difficult because it was easily Chandler's longest and most convoluted novel, so dissecting it and reconstructing it for the screen was challenging. Even though fans appreciated it, Chandler fans hated it, even though it is through and through a 70s movie.
Yeah.
It's bleak and it's dirty.
A lot of chest hair.
Oh my god, so much chest hair. And is there nudity in it?
Probably. I mean, it's the 70s. It was nudity and they didn't even think twice about it.
Yeah, there's just like
a naked woman and a kid walks by in the scene and they're like, that's good for him.
Yeah. Oh, we're setting the mood. Turtleneck City. A sail on
Turtleneck City, but just the neck and then chest hair.
That's how you know he's a bad guy. The next thing comes, and to me, it's it.
Talk about chest hair.
The Granddaddy. Although I'm sure no one really knew it. It was shortly after this little movie called Star Wars.
Which another, after all these stupid titles, like, yep, that's
another, yeah. To his credit, he was trying to recreate that. Yeah. So Brackett's a perfect fit for that. George Lucas wanted to put the second movie into production shortly after he had changed the world with the first one. So who should he go to but the queen of space operas, the madame of the starry-eyed pulps, Leigh Brackett. Lucas paid her a flat fee of $50,000 to put forth a draft of the sequel for A New Hope. The two brainstormed ideas, and she worked up a draft, and its draft is a majority of what we see in Empire Strikes Back. Her screenplay isn't word for word what was used in the movie, but the motions of the most of the things are thanks to Brackett. The reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's dad was not in the original script she wrote. In her draft, Vader is a fallen Jedi out to kill Luke, based just solely on vengeance. His dad's ghost is revealed to him on Dagobah while he's training with a slightly different Yoga. Luke has a twin sister, but it isn't Leia. And we get more of Lando's story that he's a surviving clone trooper. These are all Leigh Brackett's.
That's weird to include a clone thing that early on.
Because she knew the idea of the Clone War sounded pretty cool.
Cool enough for Lando Calrissian.
Unfortunately, shortly after turning her screenplay in, Leigh Brackett died of cancer. A truly tragic loss. Lucas also confessed to not liking her draft and sat with Lawrence.
He said that at her funeral.
This is my eulogy. He sat with Lawrence Kasdan and the director. They made like 2 new drafts based on hers. Her original screenplay exists online, and Lucas dedicated the film to her and managed to get the Writers Guild to recognize it and give her credit by submitting her draft to them and not his own. But listen, George Lucas not liking your take on Star Wars is a good thing. I've read snippets online of dialogue between Han and Leia when they're trying to outrun the Empire, and it's something really special. I really like the way they talk to each other in her draft. Her absolute love of the genre and her ability to write outlandishly fantastical worlds and plots but keep real dialogue makes her something truly magical. That same year, 1978, her name was immortalized in another up-and-coming renegade director's work. He was making a movie in LA about a killer on the loose, and the sheriff of the small town is named Leigh Brackett. The director is John Carpenter, and the movie is Halloween, the movie that started the slasher genre. Long live Leigh Brackett.
Interesting. John Carpenter kind of sounds like John Carter. Is John Carpenter a Confederate soldier as well? Pick up your microphone.
Have you seen his mustache?
And rebald me.
Have you seen his mustache? That's a Confederate mustache.
We should do a live reading of Leigh Brackett's Empire Strikes Back.
Hey, we have time now.
We have time, and the court systems are out, so they can't sue us for that. Who's next? Who next that my people have influenced?
I know that I mentioned this guy named Ray Bradbury, and you don't really want to hear his story. But guess what, stupid? It's coming. Our next segment is called The Adopted Son of the City. Here's something I didn't know. Ray Bradbury wasn't born in L.A. I thought he was. Like, he's so well regarded as, like, he's one of the greatest authors of Los Angeles.
I'm going to say he's from Wisconsin.
Ray Bradbury was born on the distant planet of Waukegan, which is in the state of Illinois, an industrial suburb north of Chicago. Hometown of...
Or Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Jack Benny, patron saint of touching your own face. Ray Bradbury comes from one of those...
His humor has not aged well.
Ray Bradbury comes from one of those white families where it can be traced hundreds of years. His lineage goes back to 1630 in Salisbury, Massachusetts.
A real John Carter family.
When they settled after escaping from jolly old England. Not so jolly old England after they left. Ray was born in August of 1920. He came from a humble working class background. One online biography said his father worked as a lineman for phone and power utilities, and his mother was an immigrant from Sweden. That's not a job. His mother, Esther, had been raised in the States since she was 3 years old, so kind of isn't the same thing as your occupation being an immigrant, but whatever.
Yeah. Wait, you think it's easy being an immigrant? Is that what you're saying?
It's a lot of hard work.
We got it. Right, audience?
Am I right? Audience full of immigrants that we pulled.
They're all applauding in their way that they do in their country, which is silently.
His maternal side of the family worked in iron and steel. His paternal worked in printing and attempted to get rich in gold and silver mining and lost it all. He grew up knowing his family history was rich with follies and quiet successes. Ray was one of four siblings.
Not rich in money.
Rich in stories. It's different. Ray was one of four siblings, a pair of twins, an older sister, and himself. But by 1927, two of his siblings died. One of the twins, Samuel, died during the flu epidemic of 1918 when he was 2 years old. And then later, his sister, Betty Jane, died of pneumonia when Ray was 7.
Get out of Chicago.
These deaths, along with the whimsy of his childhood, would shape the life and storytelling for the rest of his life. Because that's his story. It's like kind of painful, but kind of whimsical. It's like dark whimsy.
Yeah.
That's
wistful.
Thank you.
But for fun kids.
Like, he has stories growing up where him and his brother, like, somebody had in town told him the world was going to end on this day. So him and his brother packed like a lunch and went out to a rock and waited for the world to end. When he was like a teenager, I think 15, he watched a car hit a pole. Like 4 people died, and he saw that. Like, it's that stuff that's really dark, but also there's like
that's how you get a Ray Bradbury.
That's how you get a Ray Bradbury.
Yeah, but he also saw a really cute dog.
Exactly.
Beforehand.
He also ate a really good ice cream one day,
and he had to immortalize that soda jerk.
But now let's get into the whimsy. By all accounts, he seemed to have an idyllic childhood in a small town north of a big city. As an adult, he claimed to have an almost perfect recall of his childhood, even his birth. Says
what?
He says he remembered everything. Also, a weird thing that I wrote down that reminded me of you. His mother said he had a weird eating habit. Would only eat milk, hamburgers, and tomato soup.
Come on, that was never me. Did he keep anything in his pockets?
How much soup did he keep in his pocket? That's way more than I would ever.
Did he invent the lining that I now use to keep soup in my pocket?
It's heated, but it won't burn my legs. At 8 years old, everything changes when a lodger at his grandma's boarding house brought the first copy of Amazing Stories when he was 8 years old. That same year, Buck Rogers comic strips start, and he starts collecting them. A couple years later, Tarzan comics start getting printed in color. Around that time, he began reading fervently, with things like The Wonderful World of Oz and Grimm's fairy tales sticking out to him. Two huge influences in his early years was his grandmother, who would watch movies with him every week, with a particular emphasis on Lon Chaney, and the husband of our eternal mayor, Mary Pickford. They watched a lot of Douglas Fairbanks movies together. He recalls being 3 and 5 respectively when he saw The Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame in the theaters with his grandmother. The other influences was his aunt Neva, who was a costume designer and a dressmaker who would take Ray to the plays and always encourage him to use his imagination. But what to do with this imagination business? Imagine? There's no money in that. Luckily, something monetary this way comes. In 1932, at the age of 12, Ray Bradbury goes to a carnival and watches a show from a magician called Mr. Electrico. At the show, Mr. Electrico was covered in static electricity, and he found Bradbury in the crowd, and he approached. I heard that he approached him. I also heard that he was sitting down in an electric chair. But as part of the show, he touched Ray's nose and said,
"Oh no, don't do that these days."
It was a lower nose. No, he touches Ray Bradbury's nose and says, "Live forever." And Bradbury said, "And I decided I would."
And he always has.
My life came together then with Mr. Electrico telling me to live forever. I want to give you the same spark Mr. Electrico gave to me, he would tell a Cerritos high school crowd.
And that's a binding contract.
This instance charged Ray Bradbury's imagination. He came back the next day and asked Mr. Electrico for advice on a magic trick because, of course, Ray Bradbury was also into magic. Because how else can he be like Daniel?
Hey, come on. I'm not from the Midwest. I've got a hard edge.
There's something about me that is rugged.
My whimsy is rugged. I've got urban whimsy.
Urban whimsy, which is just like smog inhalation. And he found Mr. Electrico and they talked. And Mr. Electrico took him to other carnival performers. And Mr. Electrico told Ray that he was a reincarnation of his best friend who died in World War I, the mustard gas trench war. That one. Bradbury said, after that, a few days later, I began to write full time. I've written every single day of my life since that day.
What? How old was he?
12.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, your people definitely got started young.
Yeah, for sure. We're like, I read a Tarzan and I'm going to do this forever.
And wait a minute, they liked writing?
They liked whatever drug they were addicted to, so they kept writing?
They liked the money of writing, you mean.
How lucrative it was. 2 years later, 1934, the Bradbury family moves. First to Arizona for a bit, and then more permanently to Los Angeles. I, again, cannot for the life of me figure out where they moved first. It wasn't the famous house in Cheviot Hills, but at some point they moved a couple times. I can't figure out where. He was now 14, in Los Angeles, home of Hollywood, California, where a different kind of magic happened. Cocaine magic. No.
Oh, no.
Bradbury attended Berendo Junior High School in the outskirts of downtown near Olympic. Berendo has such alumnists as Mamie Van Doren, Jimmy Doolittle, and Edgar Bergen, a famous ventriloquist. So now he's at school. He's living in Los Angeles. He bums around libraries in town. He's got a job selling newspapers, which is the Los Angeles Daily News, to be exact, at the corner of Olympic and Norton, again, to be exact. And around this time, he starts attending plays because that's what he would do back home with Aunt Neva. He's a frequent at the Figueroa Street Playhouse, which is now the Variety Arts Theater in downtown. And while he's frequenting the Figueroa Street Playhouse, he lands his first job. Do you know what his first job was?
Working in the library?
His first writing job.
Wait a minute. If he's a copy of me, was it working at Linens and Things?
Hiding in linens and things and collecting a paycheck for doing no work.
I shelved some things.
I shelved some towels. Another very Daniel thing. His first writing job was writing a joke for George Burns for the Gracie and Allen show.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, how did he get that?
We'll get to that. Here's the bit. Gracie goes, oh! And George is like, quick, somebody, Gracie has fainted. Hurry, bring a glass of water. Gracie, can't you say something? And Gracie says, sure, this is the Columbia Broadcasting System. And then the music plays, which is better than any intro we've ever written.
But hang on, what was Act 2 like?
Did she eat a funny thing?
The theme song started playing, but then got interrupted.
Yeah, it gets interrupted
and
again.
Then what mythical creature then came and interrupted
Griffin
that?
comes. He had gotten to know George and Gracie and had started giving amateur scripts to them every Wednesday for consideration because they would also frequent the same playhouse, so he'd run into them because I guess they were broadcasting the radio show from there, so he would just run into them.
This is, we joked about, like, why would Leigh Brackett run into Edgar Rice Burroughs? Well, Raymond Bradbury.
Yeah, Raymond Bradbury would run into George Burns and Gracie Allen just going to the theater. So yeah, he'd gotten to know them. He'd start giving them amateur scripts to them every Wednesday for consideration. Somehow this was the winner. After Berendo, he attended Los Angeles High School, which is on Olympic in Mid-City. There you could find Ray and, of course, the drama club, where he hoped to one day be an actor. He was also still writing every day and reading anything he could get his mitts on. At this point, collecting all the Prince Valiant's comics. He also had a real admiration for Thomas Wolfe and began to write poetry. He had 2 dedicated teachers who were his only instruction as far as writing. He saved up his lunch money to buy a typewriter. He wrote bylines for the school paper on live performances by Jack Benny and Fred Allen. This was his life in high school.
Not only just like a dedicated writer, but a dedicated comedy fan.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. And he's kind of funny. Like, not like hard-hitting funny, but he's...
I mean, yeah, it's funny when a kid licks an ice cream cone and falls on the floor, which is the recurring joke.
So sentimental.
Very sentimental. Yeah. Very amber tinted.
Exactly, yeah. It was the greatest summer ever. And then, like, a lady dies.
And that's why it was the greatest summer.
I got away with it. In 1936, the next cosmic phase begins for Ray Bradbury when he's at a secondhand bookstore in Hollywood and sees a handbill promoting a meeting for the LASFS, the Los Angeles Science Fantasy Society. Once again, we talk about them a little bit more when we talk about Forrest Ackerman and Monsters and the Nerds Who Love Them. Okafor, Nerd Zero, and weirdly enough, the grandson of the architect behind the Bradbury building, no relation, had created a group of science fiction enthusiasts who would meet on the second floor of Clifton's Cafeteria.
Clifton's Lafeteria. That funny Raymond. I keep calling him Raymond Bradbury.
Raymond Bradbury. He joined the group, which met every Thursday and would join the ranks of such beautiful nerds as, again, Kutner, Hyland, Brackett, and L. Ron Hubbard. The members really took a liking to Bradbury and encouraged him to keep writing, which of course he did. So he graduates high school in 1938 and he keeps writing. He does not pursue college. He is luckily not sent to the military at the dawn of World War II because his eyesight is atrocious. It has been since he was
this guy is me.
13. So he stays home and he...
Did he get a concussion playing hockey and then he realized he had to get glasses?
Oh, it's like, now what's this playing card read?
Hang on. I'm seeing Johnny Carson reference.
Oh!
You're attracting this dog's attention. It's going to give us coronavirus.
That one?
Yeah, it keeps looking at it. It is cute. Of course it's cute. It has coronavirus.
Yeah. So luckily, because his eyesight is so bad, he gets to stay home and get free limeade from Clifford Clinton as he continues to write every day and spend hours in libraries reading everything he can get his hands on. Anything he can get his hands on. He's like Quentin Tarantino with movies is Ray Bradbury with novels and poems and short stories.
That turned him into 2 very opposite people.
Yeah, for sure.
Both like milkshakes, though.
Nah, both hunch a lot.
And feet.
With the encouragement of his sci-fi friends, he started aiming all his writing towards pulp magazines and club fanzines.
Pulp Fiction. There's the connection.
If only we didn't already use that title for another episode. This one can be called Kill. Never mind.
How about the hateful Hollywood?
Got it. His first short story that got published was Hollerbachen's Dilemma, which is in the League's fanzine. That was 1938, same year he got out of high school. The following year, he created his own fanzine, Future of Fantasia. Also that year, our guy Bradbury attends the first World Science Fiction Convention in New York City. He mingles, he wines, He dines on a dime, of course. But more importantly, he networks his sci-fi editors, and from this lands his first sale to a professional science fiction magazine, Super Science Stories, which 2 years later would publish his story Pendulum. And yes, he did get paid for the story. No, Mr. Clinton. Today I'll be buying my own limeade.
And can I also get some turkey stuffing with gravy?
Please. From Super Science Stories, he moved on to getting his short stories published in pulp magazines like Weird Tales. What was beginning to emerge from his style was a superb use of metaphors and similes and a concentration on characters existing in science fiction and fantasy worlds.
I'm telling you, all these people that we're talking about are the same person.
Yeah, basically. We just changed names. That's the thing about Ray Bradbury that separates him from all the other pulp writers, is that it was less about technology and the mechanics of like science fiction and more about like people in the situations.
That's why I'm not the biggest fan of most of Ray Bradbury's stuff, is because
you like the technology aspect.
I love the technology and like I don't know, there's his is almost more, I'm thinking of Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is not science fiction at all, and it's barely horror.
Yeah.
But like that's why I'm kind of not as into most of his stuff, because like Arthur C. Clarke is all technology.
He's like a scientist with a typewriter.
Pretty much. And Arthur C. Raymond Bradbury is just a heart that grew arms.
Is Clarke your guy?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
But no question.
What is
Martian Chronicles?
Martian Chronicles. I really like the Martian Chronicles, and
I'm halfway through it right now. It's really good.
I remember liking Fahrenheit 451, but maybe there's too much heart in it for me.
I never tried Fahrenheit 451 because I always knew that was a banned book, and I knew what it was about, so I never tried it.
I couldn't read.
I wouldn't dare.
Child. I wouldn't read the Bible or Harry Potter.
But I, in high school, read as much short stories from him as I could because somebody turned me on to the Illustrated Man, which I didn't like that short story, but like the Vault was in there, I think. And it's really good.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Illustrator. I also watched his Ray Bradbury Presents, which is
they're fun.
They're fun, but boy, are they sentimental.
You said amber-coated, very amber-coated. Yeah. So he's writing a different kind of sci-fi than everybody else because sci-fi changed big time when the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Had science gone too far? Who was the good guys? I thought we were the good guys. We beat fascism, but now we're burning shadows of people into walls. Are there good guys? Has science made us stray away from God or whatever I believe in? What do we believe in now that we're the destroyer of worlds? Twilight Zone was born in this era, and with that, I think sci-fi started telling really human stories about people making challenging decisions and science used for evil or ambivalent purposes.
Okay, let me defend myself a little bit by saying I don't like the heart of Ray Bradbury because the Twilight Zone, that has a lot of heart in it also. I don't know, the thing with Ray Bradbury is what I've read a lot just seems very sentimental and nostalgic, and it doesn't do that much for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of them that I started, I'm like, I just can't make through. Like, it's just Goosebumps, which is fine. Be Goosebumps, but I'm not in the mood for Goosebumps.
Because I also thought, like, everything he wrote was science fiction or fantasy. And then I picked up Dandelion Wine.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what do the...
Are they aliens?
All over again, this is the Day of the Locust, where I'm going in, like, here comes the... Like, what, did the aliens bring Dandelion Wine
and you drink it and it's actually human blood? Yeah. Is this Soylent Wine? I think the short
story about growing up in the country.
Yep, it's basically his childhood, which is like, it's a lot of bikes. Yeah. I was a big fan. He has a short story called The Icing Body Electric is the one that ends up being a Twilight Zone episode, and it's the same thing. It's fun. Yeah,
it's not my favorite.
Inspired Chicken Motel, I think that's the name of it. It's sentimental, but like with a little tongue-in-cheek, I guess. My favorite short stories from his, they're basically Twilight Zone episodes. That never became Twilight Zone episodes, and they should have been because they're both really good.
Yeah. Stick with the Martian Chronicles.
Brad Baby falls into this group, and with over 600 short stories published, some are trash, just like plenty of Twilight Zone are trash, but the good ones are great.
Whoa. I'm sure we said that earlier, but whoa.
Now we're comparing stuff.
Whoa. Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote over 100 things, and like 4 are good, but whoa.
Whoa. This coronavirus has got to go. Whoa. You people in the park have got to go. But 1945, Hiroshima, Twilight Zone, we're not there yet. 1940. His life was writing feverishly, reading obsessively at the library, chatting it up about the news at the newsstand, taking acting lessons from Lorraine Day at the Wilshire Players Guild, and repeatedly watching Fantasia.
The movie Fantasia. Are you kidding me?
He watched that repeatedly.
I watched that movie probably every single day for like 3 years of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
You were Ray Bradbury.
It's weird. I don't like Ray Bradbury that much, but
I'm sure he didn't like Ray Bradbury much either.
I also don't like myself.
He was living at Figueroa and Temple. I can't find
that's
out
where I used to.
That's my childhood place. And then Sundays he would spend with Leigh Brackett at Muscle Beach comparing stories.
Just like us.
So this was his life in 1940, and it was a good life. But his writing would continue to improve, and with that, his adventure would become way more interesting. 1943 is when he establishes himself as a full-time writer, getting published in several genre magazines. In 1947, he gets a rejection notice from Weird Tales, and out of frustration sends his story titled Homecoming to Mademoiselle. It ends up in a discard pile, but one young editorial assistant saved the story and helped get it published in the magazine. That young assistant? Truman Capote.
What is this Forrest Gump of a life?
I was thinking the same thing.
I feel like where there's so many different puzzle pieces. Maybe I just have puzzles on the mind because that's what I've been doing for the last 3 days.
But this is so LA because you're feverishly working in your hustle. You're meeting other people who are eventually going to do the same. Like you're just like, it's not networking because you're working hard. You're just meeting people, but eventually later it becomes networking.
Weird. Truman Capote
runs into a group run by Forrest Ackerman. Also in the group, a woman who would write Empire Strikes Back, and the guy who started Scientology.
Form a religion that would ruin lives.
He writes Homecoming, and it ends up winning the O. Henry Prize of 1947. When it was published, it had illustrations drawn by his pal, Charles Addams, the creator of the Addams Family one-strip comics, along with many other humorous and kind of racist illustrations. Side note, the woman who was partly responsible for the look and feel of Morticia was Charles' first wife, Barbara Jean Addams, left him and married the guy who wrote Hiroshima.
Oh, yeah. Huh. It's all connected.
1947 was also the year that Bradbury got married to Marguerite McClure, who he met the year before at a bookstore. They met after she thought he was shoplifting, which fits the bill if you know what I mean. She said, once I figured out he wasn't stealing books, that was it. I fell for him. His best man, Ray Harryhausen.
Oh my God.
Right? What a life.
Yeah.
Okay, same year, 1947. All this stuff is happening. His short story gets published into a collection called Dark Carnival. Kind of hard to find now. A lot of it ended up in October Country, which I am a little more familiar with. He has a book on writing that I like a lot. And he mentions he wrote one short story and he cried. And that's when he knew he was a great writer. I'm like, get out of here. And I rolled my eyes. And I read it, and it's one of the best things I've ever written. It's called The Lake. It's really good. If you ever stumble across a Ray Bradbury short story, The Lake, I highly suggest it.
This is exactly what I'm talking about not liking. I want a guy who wants a paycheck and has a pregnant wife.
I want Raymond Chandler, who had to be bullied into everything he ever wrote. Yeah, it's really good. It's painful, but not sadistic. It packs a punch. It has a wallop of an ending, but not a twist. It's his own version of Nothing in the Dark, the Twilight Zone episode. It's my suggested reading of this whole thing is The Veldt and The Lake.
Okay. You see, it's fun because on the Ray Bradbury Theater or whatever that show was called, the intro is that he'd lead you. He's like, welcome to my house, and look at these things I can inspire. And one thing that always stuck out is, well, there might be a knife or an African Veldt. That's what he'd say at the beginning of every episode. He's such a dork.
He sounds like a lazy Hitchcock. Get up, walk.
If such a thing is possible.
So the next book pretty much makes Bradbury. It's another collection of intertwined short stories, and it's called, as we already discussed, The Martian Chronicles, which was published in 1950. This really sets him apart from his peers. What's remarkable about it? It's not a space epic. It takes place on Mars. It's not an adventure.
And it's like different time periods.
Yeah, exactly. Of like colonization of Mars, right? Mars is almost inconsequential to the story. It's space and technology and distant lands are a background to it. Really gripping stories about like loss and internal struggles. When I said some of Brackett's stories could be inaccessible, it was in regards to how human Bradbury's short sci-fi stories are. He follows the Martian Chronicles with another Bradbury staple, a collection of short stories that is The Illustrated Man, which I was forced to read in high school, and I was really
disappointed by The Illustrated Man.
Yeah, I shouldn't have told that teacher I like tattoos, and then he made me read that. I like The Veldt, though, but whatever.
The Veldt.
His good streak continues with maybe his most loved classic, Fahrenheit 451, which he wrote on a rental Royal KMM typewriter in the basement of the Powell Library at the UCLA.
I thought he wrote in the LAPL library.
He might have switched but I know he wrote some stuff.
Everyone claims like he wrote it in the Veldt.
I know he was like, a problem in his life was coin-operated typewriters. That was like a huge issue with him.
That sounds, I wouldn't write. Like if I had to put a coin in every 5 minutes to write,
I know.
I wouldn't write.
Writing this story is going to cost me $9.80. Forget it.
The Veldt, but I gotta put on the Veldt. Seinfeld.
This book, Fahrenheit 451.
I think I have corona. I've been slowly going crazy in my apartment. And it's manifesting in being rusty and also stupid.
Welcome to 2020. Rusty, stupid. Okay.
That's my new sci-fi character. He's a Confederate soldier, make no mistake. Rusty, stupid. stupid.
The book is, of course, a landmark, a true American classic. It deals with a dystopian future where books are banned, and the man whose job it is to burn the books take a step back and ends up falling for and protecting literature. On paper, it sounds kind of lame, but I'm sure it's amazing.
I remember reading it and really liking it,
yeah.
But I wonder if I'd still like it going back to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people always lump that and
1984?
What?
1984?
1984, and there's a third one, but the third one doesn't deserve to be ranked together, and it's Catch-22.
Oh, yeah, I never read that.
Yeah.
Not enough Velts.
I haven't read the first 21. Anywho.
I'll be lost. So it won't make sense to me like it doesn't for anybody.
The book basically came from a lot of different ideas that he already put forth in like short stories. Short stories turned into a novella, and then it ended up becoming Fahrenheit 451, which of course I already said was on the banned book list, which of course makes it more, first of all, funny because the book about censorship, and then also every couple of years like, oh, we have to read that banned book. It's just, it's not smut, it's just...
Make no mistake, it's not smutty like that Harry Potter. It's not smutty like Where the Wild Things Are. Smut.
So it's 1955. You're in Hollywood. It's about time you get in the pictures, right? Bradbury had already done some Hollywood work writing. He wrote a treatment for It Came From Outer Space, 1953. But after some meetings with John Huston over the years about adapting his books, he was once again approached by Huston to adapt a film version of Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Do you know this?
The Gregory Peck one?
Yeah.
Okay.
That Ray Bradbury wrote the screenplay for it.
I can't think of anything less interesting than Ray Bradbury's take on Moby Dick.
Two things. Brad Baby would have to travel to Ireland to write it along with Huston, so he'd have to leave his home in Hollywood and go to Ireland to write this thing from an intense man to write it with another intense man. And two, although he had a copy of the book, he was never able to trudge through Moby
chowder,
Dick.
Don't you?
I got 4 hours about chowder. Here's the history of this particular port. He said he had so much trouble trying to read it from the beginning, so what he did was, he did what I do. He opened a book to a random page in the middle and just went from there, and he ended up loving it, because it turns out Bradbury has a real soft spot for Shakespeare. Of course he does. But so did Herman Melville, and apparently Herman Melville wrote it, and after writing Moby Dick, finally was able to read Shakespeare. I forget. There's a reason why he never read Shakespeare, but he finally found a copy of Shakespeare.
Like he's immune to Shakespeare now because he got an inactive strand of Shakespeare.
Yeah, and now he actually caught it. Herman Melville reads Shakespeare and then rewrites Moby Dick now with Ahab, or like more Ahab, or now with more Ahab. So like Bradbury is reading Moby Dick. He's like, you like Shakespeare like I like Shakespeare. And then suddenly understood Moby Dick. Huh. But the task of...
that should be banned.
The chapter about chowder for sure should be banned. This was going to be hard for... Even John Huston, according to Bradbury, had either never read it or didn't understand it. So like now it was up to mostly Bradbury to decipher this thing. Moby Dick for the big screen. It's not going to be a miniseries. It's not going to be like on Netflix. Yeah. Each episode is 2. It's not going to be Ken Burns' Moby Dick. This is going to be a 2-hour thing with Gregory Peck. It's got to be like, that didn't matter. He took the job anyway. And he said it was, writing this was grueling. 12-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week for 8 months in Ireland and England. It was hard brain work trying to break down and rearrange Moby Dick. How do you even begin to make that ready for the big screen? It sounded like he cracked. One morning he went in front of a mirror and was like, I am Herman Melville. And sat down, and in 8 hours of passionate, red-hot writing, he described it. He finished the screenplay, threw it on Huston's lap, and said, there it is, I'm done.
There it is, take it. I imagine this is like, you didn't see The Lighthouse, but no, I imagine this is like The Lighthouse.
It's a little bit like Tropic Thunder, too.
Which is your Moby Dick.
Which is my Moby Dick. And Huston's like, my God, what happened? And Bradbury replied, behold, Herman Melville. So yeah, working on a movie with John Huston didn't break him, but it should have. He was dying to come back though, and he wanted to rejoin his family. He had 4 daughters, but at this point in his life, I think he had three daughters at this point. So he works in TV too, writing an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. The episode is Shopping for Death. He writes like a couple more for a series, 2 more for Alfred Hitchcock Hour. He adapts 1 short story for The Twilight Zone, Icing the Body Electric. It was one of several that got rejected. He's known more for getting rejected by Twilight Zone than getting accepted by Twilight Zone.
Isn't that funny that Rod Serling was so particular of like top sci-fi writer in the country?
Yeah.
Nah.
How about this kid who was abused by his mom? Charles Beaumont? Yeah, get him for a bunch of them. I've been rewatching, now that we're living in a Twilight Zone episode, I've been rewatching them. They have a sentimental streak, but every once in a while they do a mean thing to somebody, and it's good.
It's always mean. I mean, yeah, it's always, twisted irony, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Go ahead. Next up, Bookwise was Dandelion Wine in 1957, which is a semi-autobiographical look at this beautiful childhood in Illinois. It's nostalgic and sentimental with elements of fantasy and wonder. After that came A Medicine for Melancholy.
Where's the fantasy? What, this wine wasn't fermented enough, but it's still good?
That's in Wine Tales. Amazing Wine Tales. After A Medicine for Melancholy, there's Something Wicked This Way Comes, followed later by The Halloween Tree. All of these are like standard classic Bradbury names that his name is synonymous with.
Yeah. You know that look that, like, his TV show had it, but, like, the look that almost...
Like a Lifetime movie?
Yeah, like children's movies for TV from the 80s.
Yeah,
like that sort of filter is what all of his books give off to me.
For sure, yeah. Nostalgic and sentimental.
It's fuzzy, a little glossy.
A little bit fuzzy, like professional mullet. So it's just like a perm, but it's like a little bit deeper on one end than the other.
Twisted perms.
In 1964...
That's my magazine.
In 1964, he received his favorite of the many awards he'd win throughout his life when he was named the Ideas Consultant for the United States Pavilion at the 1964 World's Fair. He said, can you believe it? He would also go on to write the basic scenario for the interior spaceship at Epcot Disney World, and he also worked on the city engineering and rapid transit, a thing he was familiar with because he did not know how to drive. Ray Bradbury pulled off the greatest science fiction trick of all time. He lived in LA since a teenager and did not cooperate with the you gotta get a car rule.
I wonder what all of his friends thought about that.
Didn't have a car, always broke going to the Cliftons.
Can you cover this? Can you cover my limeade?
Mr. Clinton has it.
Can you ride me back to my hovel?
Oh, I don't have a license for my Segway. I like that we're just ragging on him. I love Ray Bradbury. Anyways, he continued to work through the years and became a well-loved literary character, giving more than his fair share of speeches to schools and libraries, promoting literacy and showing up to book festivals, and being, from all appearances, incredibly kind and appreciative to his fans.
I will give him that. He seems like a really nice guy, and he cared about people.
Yeah.
And he did a lot for the city.
He did, yeah.
I'll give him that.
I'll give him that.
I'll give one of the most famous writers of all time that.
He also never lost his footing. Like, he loved talking about, like, I did this at the library. I did this because I read about it.
Yeah,
like,
he was crazy about the library.
Yeah. He would win awards all through his life. You know, he had many TV and movie adaptations of his work. Even, like, recently, they redid, like, Fahrenheit 451. He was, like, involved. I think he was involved with
Michael B. Jordan and Michael B. Shannon.
Marguerite, his wife, died in 2003, and Ray Bradbury himself died in 2012 at the age of 91. 3 years later, his house he wrote many classics in, 10265 Cheviot Drive in Cheviot Hills, was demolished by a dickhead named Tom Maine, who was confused and disappointed by the public's negative reaction. He said, maybe I'm naive, but it's just really been a bummer.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it's too late.
He tried to make it up.
We're about to be infected yet again. Don't encourage that. Greg, you're putting children at risk. More so than usual.
Tom Maine, the guy who destroyed the house, he tried to make it up to the fans by having a company turn fragments of the wood of Bradbury's house into 450 sets of wooden bookends, sold for $88.50. But the money went to the Center for Ray Bradbury's Studies at India University.
Why $88.50? Oh, is that the address? No, it
wasn't. I don't know why that much. But then, of the money they collected from selling these bookends made of Ray Bradbury's old house, the center that they were donating to only got a portion of it. Great. But Bradbury's legacy isn't about a house. The city dedicated the cross streets of 5th and Flower to him, declaring it Ray Bradbury Square because it was close to Clifton's and the Central Library, two places incredibly important to Bradbury. Is Bradbury's legacy bigger than a cross street? Yeah. In 1971, one of the Apollo astronaut teams landed on the moon. They named a crater after one of his novels. They called it Dandelion Crater. Is Bradbury's legacy deeper than...
They picked the worst one.
What?
They picked the worst one.
They picked a different one. Is his name
Burroughs got one on Mars. That's fine.
Is his legacy deeper than a crater? It depends on the crater. Ray Bradbury was a sci-fi futurist who didn't like computers or the internet, who didn't fly in a plane until late in his life. But the most important thing about Bradbury to me was his enthusiasm, his never-ending hustle, his vision, but he was a champion of the imagination. Yeah. His crusade was to get everyone to use their imagination and their creativity and make something. He wrote a great American novel on a library coin-operated typewriter, and you could do that too. Not you. All you need is imagination and a bunch of dimes. He's a guy who has his footprint on this city. He's a guy with city folktales. When I was growing up and I wanted to be a writer since the second grade Miss Prince Meadows class, it was pushed on me that Ray Bradbury, famous sci-fi writer, always went to the library. He always read, he always wrote. He did it, and you can do it too. That's Ray Bradbury's legacy. And he was a son of the city, albeit an adopted son. Ken Starr says it best in Golden Dreams, California in the Age of Abundance, 1950-1963. In short, like Los Angeles itself, eclectic and unintimidated, and an entertainer whom highbrow critics took seriously, a self-educated urban planner respected by professionals, and a jack of all writing trades, Bradbury was, in short, a latter-day Jack London for Los Angeles, and doing all this without the benefit of a driver's license. That's Ray Bradbury's story.
Yeah, but...
Yeah, but dandelion wine.
I rest my case. Dandelion wine.
I'm taking my friggin' shoes off.
Oh, no, that's a symptom.
That's too cold. It's far too cold for that.
He's not my favorite, but I do respect him, and I am also told I should respect him more.
I'd like to say something before you start on this one. Mm-hmm. That I feel like with this episode, I picked both of yours.
You did. Wait, no. You didn't pick Raymond Chandler?
You tossed it up in the air,
Yeah,
and I said, first I wanted you to do Tarzana. I want to do Burroughs' story because it has to do with the valley, and I know you would eat it up. With this one, you asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said, no, I want you to do it. I like hearing stories from you because they're always better.
Well, here's the... Oh, that's good to hear. Let's isolate that. That's the new intro. It was a cold, rainy day. The kind of day that made you use a simile. Perhaps even a reference to a blonde woman.
It's good. That is as undelivered as a pizza from a dead guy, see? You're just as good as Raymond Chandler now.
It's time to talk about the writer who's synonymous with the city I live in, the city of angels. Raymond Thornton Chandler was born July 23rd, 1888, in the city we all know and love, Chicago, Illinois. They're all. I think they might have all been from Chicago.
Not Brackett, but the other ones were for sure Illinois.
Yeah, they were. His mom, Florence, was a former Quaker from Ireland, and his dad, some people called him Maurice, was also a former Quaker from Pennsylvania, who is now a railway engineer by day and an alcoholic by night, and sometimes by day.
2 jobs?
Wow, what is he, Edgar Rice Burroughs? The Chandler name being an old French word for candle maker.
I didn't know that.
Like chandelier.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean candle maker?
That doesn't have to do with anything, but I did not put that together. So he didn't spend much time in Chicago. His only memory of Chicago, I saw a cop shoot a little white dog to death.
Yep, Raymond Chandler.
See, Ray Bradbury took that experience and turned it cute. The family then moved to Plattsmouth, Nebraska to be with his mom's sister until Raymond was 7 when, all around the same time, he got scarlet fever and his dad abandoned the family, making his mom what they call a drink widow.
Wow.
So his dad's gone, he's at death's door now. So not knowing what to do, Raymond and his mom moved to Ireland that year in 1895 to be with her family, and then in 1896 to London to be with her mom and sister. For education, Raymond was sent at age 12 to Dulwich College, where it became clear that little Ray had a knack for 2 subjects: math, which he won several awards for, and classic literature, which I don't think he ever won an award for. He became well versed in ancient literature. Like, he was literate. He knew books. Are you
gonna get into the Knights of Templar?
No, what was he? Also crazy?
He loved it, and we'll get into Marlowe later.
Well, he was reading the works of the Greek poets in Greek.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, but there were 2 things he took away from Dulwich that would define him later in life. The first was that one of his exercises was that he'd take Latin texts. He could read Latin also. He'd translate them into English and then retranslate them into Latin with their new English filter on it.
What is he, like a demon summoner?
He also did it backwards.
He also lit a bunch of candles. He's a candle maker.
So what that did was it taught him how to take a story and then boil it down to its bare bones and then retell the story with his interpretation. So the second thing he took away was the name of one of the houses at the college was Marlowe House.
Wow. Okay.
So these 2 things apparently stuck with him. But as talented as he was at math and literature, he decided to pursue international law instead and spent his teenage years studying in Paris and Munich until 1907 when he came back to London to take the British Civil Service exam, which is a test that lasts for 6 days. Competing against...
What, are you getting hazed by your fraternity?
Pretty much. You're competing against like 1,000 other British boys for 6 days. He ended up finishing first in classics on the test and 3rd overall, which landed him a clerkship with the British Admiralty, which I'm sure is something that makes sense to somebody. What it also landed him was a life that he didn't like. He quit his clerkship shortly after getting it and turned towards something he'd always expressed interest in, writing. So he became a freelance journalist for the London Daily Express, but he quickly realized reporting wasn't what he was meant for. No. He knew deep down what he was meant to write was sappy, limp poetry. So
like gothic prose, right?
Bad poems. Not good poetry. The first one he got published was called The Unknown Love, which could have been one of his books. That was 1908, and all he got 27 poems published in the Westminster Gazette and Bristol's Western Gazette. He also did a few essays, a short story called The Roseleaf Romance. Nobody liked any of this, and he couldn't make a living, so he gave up writing as well, and then since he was on a roll, he gave up Europe altogether, and he decided to come back to the United States. He left his mom in England, so he, I'll get money, I'll send back for you, you'll come. This was 1912. On the boat back to America, he met a couple named Caroline and Warren Lloyd, who lived in Los Angeles, and they were a very charismatic and intellectual couple, which Raymond was drawn to, and by the time they docked, they had extended an invitation to have him come stay in the wonderful city of Los Angeles with them.
Swingers.
Well,
you caught me again. I'm making this all up.
I was trying to see if you like the idea of that. So after a brief and failed attempt at making a living in St. Louis,
don't worry, there's just a couple of omens flying above.
ducks with red eyes. After St. Louis, he said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to Los Angeles. This house the three of them lived in, he lived with them, was at 713 South Bonniebury, right by MacArthur Park.
Really?
Raymond got along well with the Lloyds, and he was having a pretty good time. A thing that he and Warren used to do was they would go to one of the theaters. What are you looking at behind me?
A beagle. Go ahead.
This is why we need a secluded area to keep your focus.
You can only stare at ghosts.
Yeah, you can only look at the stains on the wall behind me where we normally record. So they would go to a theater on Broadway downtown, and they'd sit on opposite ends of the theater, and they'd go see a sad movie. And when a really serious scene came on the screen, one of them would start laughing, and then on the other end of the theater, the other one would start laughing, and they'd try to see how many people they could get in the theater to start laughing also. And they usually got most people laughing with them, which is weird. Weird social experiment. Yeah. So the Lloyds also exposed him to their highbrow group of intellectual friends who would regularly gather at the house for parties, and they'd party, they had seances, things like that. They called themselves the Optimists. This is where Raymond met a woman named Pearl Eugenia Hurlburt, which is almost the same last name as Edgar Rice Burroughs' wife. A name that's so beautiful, Raymond knew he just had to have her. The only roadblocks were that Sissy, as she went by, was 18 years older than him and also married. So they struck up a non-romantic romance, but meanwhile, Raymond needed a job. He worked a lot of odd jobs around town. He was picking apricots. He was stringing tennis rackets. He had a brief stint yet again with the Los Angeles Daily Express. He only works for Daily Expresses, but he was fired after 6 weeks due to sucking at writing. But he found steady work as an accountant for the Los Angeles Creamery, which was pretty much an ice cream company. And the only idea funnier than being an accountant for an ice cream company is when that accountant is Raymond Chandler. It was a dark and spicy chocolate. Never said anything like that in any of his books. That's what Snoopy writes when he writes. So the Creamery's offices were downtown on South Olive, and he eventually had enough money to send for his mom to join him, and the two moved into a house in Bunker Hill.
Oh, wow.
His life seemed to be settling into a middle-of-the-road kind of routine. Just a boy, his ice cream accounting books, fudge the numbers, etc., etc.
Hitting on a married woman.
Yeah, basically. Trying to marry mommy issues while also living with his mommy. They'd go picnicking in the valley. They were just going around the city. Then World War the First one came along.
The mustard gas one.
He made the pretty inappropriate decision to move his mom in with Sissy, the older woman he was having an emotional affair with, and her husband also all lived together now while he went to war. They lived at 127 South Vendome near the original Tommy's.
Oh, wow, okay.
And being the good American that he was, he joined the Canadian Army.
Was the Chinese one full?
They had a strict no Laowai policy. They made that clear after Burroughs tried. Some think his eagerness to join was because he was torn up about Sissy and didn't want to break up her marriage even though he loved her.
Yeah.
I think he just wanted all of his mommy issues under one roof. So during the war, he served in the Canadian Expeditionary Force, the Royal Flying Corps, and the Gordon Highlanders, which if there's one thing I understand less than British government titles, it's military titles from any country. So this made no sense to me these years. For Raymond, do you know about his World War I career?
Well, not really. I know he came back and he was a little bit messed up.
For Raymond, unlike everyone else in World War I, war was hell. In France, he was in charge of leading an entire troop of men into direct German artillery fire, and during this battle, every single person in his troop died except for Raymond Chandler.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think he got like a concussion and everybody else was dead. So for good reason, he never wrote about or spoke of the war afterwards, except to say this: once you've had to lead a platoon into direct machine gun fire, nothing is ever the same again. So that was World War I. To make things worse, during the war, he got the Spanish flu. Not once, but twice.
2 times?
And he managed to survive both times.
You should have stayed home, buddy.
6 feet, mate. 6 feet.
6
under.
feet.
I'm trying to think of like a Raymond Chandler. 6 feet to the coffee shop.
No.
No, that's not it either.
No.
I'll come up with it.
It'll hit you.
Understandably, Raymond came back to the country a changed man. Tried his luck in Seattle doing I don't know what before he then tried San Francisco.
And then he went to San Francisco and Hamlet's like, no.
Kind of. He wrote for the San Francisco Daily Express. He was still doing newspaper stuff, but always Daily Express, which didn't work out. And then a bank he worked at, which also didn't work out, before finally coming back to Los Angeles in 1919 to try his hand yet again at poetry, which yet again didn't work out. Another failed writer of mine. So he turned back to what he was apparently born to do, accounting. In 1922, he landed an accounting job at the Dabney Oil Syndicate and counted his beans in their offices in the Bank of Italy building near Pershing Square, which is now the Nomad Hotel. So that's where he was sitting behind a desk. He also made frequent trips down to Signal Hill, but this job put him on a solid ground for once, which allowed his mind to focus once more on his love for Sissy. Sissy seemed to be willing to leave her husband for Raymond, but the other old lady in his life, his mom, disapproved, and Raymond couldn't bring himself to go against the wish wishes of his mother.
Oh my God, Norman Bates over here.
Lucky for him, she died in January 1924, and the two
In a
were
fruit
married.
cellar.
The two were married 2 weeks later.
You're kidding.
On February 6th. Yeah.
Now that the old bag is dead.
I can have you, old bag.
You could be my new mommy.
Life was pretty good for a little bit. He managed to work his way up from accountant to vice president of the oil company, and was taking in a lot of money, but something inside of him was rotten. He must have seen a lot of greed in the job based on greedy oil men that keep coming up in his books.
Yeah.
And he wasn't that kind of guy. He can't have been happy with that line of work, and his memories and desires must have just started catching up to him, because as the year went on, he started drinking a lot, caring less and less about his work. He started having affairs with his secretaries, and eventually in 1932, the company just didn't want to tolerate it anymore, so they fired him. So now it's the height of the Great Depression, and we've got a depressed man with no job at all, and he's a drunk.
Yeah.
He was living at 1639 Reedsdale in Silver Lake around this time, but his money troubles started chasing him out of places, so in all, he lived in 24 places across Los Angeles, from Silver Lake all the way to Santa Monica and everywhere in between. He pretty much was moving every single year.
Like a couch surfer?
No, he owned or rented all these houses, but he just was like, I don't know. They kicked us out. I don't know where the last 4 months of rent went. So, not knowing how to make money and nowhere to turn, he decided to give writing another shot. Again, apparently writing is just so lucrative and easy for people to do.
And it's also like you only come across it when you're at the bottom.
Yeah. So he hadn't completely abandoned writing by this point. He seems to have dabbled here and there casually. On August 29, 1917, he had even registered a comic opera he wrote called The Princess and the Peddler, but keep in mind, he's 44 years old. When he's turning to really get serious about writing, he's 44 years old. He wasn't a hot young gun anymore writing bad poems for newspapers. He was an older guy, but he knew he needed to make this work. So, but instead of journalism and bad poetry, this time he fixed his sights on a different type of writing. He was a fan of mystery and detective stories, in particular Dashiell Hammett, who was the king at the time of detective stories. The two ended up meeting once in their lifetimes, but Raymond, they liked each other apparently.
Yeah, but they didn't become friends or anything.
No, Raymond respected Hammett's ability to deliver solid detective stories. He thought maybe I could do that sort of thing. He didn't like contrived murder stories designed around random plot twists. He liked stories about people murdering people for good reasons.
Yeah.
So like what Hammett did, Raymond wanted to elevate the pulp crime stories and take them to a higher level and sneak in high-quality literary writing while he was at it, which he was capable. He knew literature.
He knew literature, yeah.
He sat down at a typewriter, and 5 months later, he had an 18,000-word story called Blackmailers Don't Shoot. He managed to sell it to Black Mask magazine, and Raymond Chandler's first detective story was published December 1933, and he made a whopping $180 for 5 months of work. But for once in his life, a small paycheck didn't make him quit immediately. Writing fast was never his specialty, so he kept slowly churning out more short detective stories every few months. Short stories that took him months to write.
Yeah.
And was selling them to Black Mask and other pulp magazines like Dime Detective, Detective Fiction Weekly for barely any money at all.
Yeah.
On average, he was only making about $1,500 a year at this time of his life. But with his fourth short story, Killer in the Rain, he hit on something. His
one of his many
his old wife's mom. This was when he introduced his new hero. It was a weary detective who was smart, cool, and flawed, but also uncorruptible, and a modern day, for the 30s, righteous knight fighting for the forces of good in a world full of evil.
That's what he said, is that Philip Marlowe was a Knights Templar.
Philip Marlowe is he's not exactly someone you want to be around, but he always does the right thing, which is what's so much fun to read.
It is, yeah. And he's incredibly funny, but he's also like compelled to figure out what happened. Like it's not even
for
about
the good of the victim.
Exactly, yeah.
This is Philip Marlowe. Enter Philip Marlowe. Raymond went on to make Philip Marlowe the main character of all the rest of his stories. It wasn't until 1939, at the age of 50, that he decided to try his hand at long stories, and after 3 months, which is pretty quick for him, he wrote his first book, The Big Sleep, centered around Philip Marlowe. This is when his money trouble started going away, because paperback books were just starting to go through a huge phase of popularity, so his writing was finally starting to pay off big time. And rightfully so, because he had done exactly what he had set out to do years earlier and elevated the detective genre. His murders weren't frilly, whimsical Agatha Christie, or like the case of the cat who licked the boysenberry pie, or that sort of thing. There was no sentimentality. Speaking of Raymond Chandler, Raymond Bradbury, whatever. His crimes were harsh, and they were real, and they were scary. There was violence, there was rape, as children just walked by us. The world was dirty and rough and hard. In other words, hard-boiled. He was doing hard-boiled crime fiction, and his writing style was unique and revolutionary. He wasn't particularly great at plot, like we talked about, nor did he care to be. He hated neat endings. He said the ideal mystery was the one you would read if the ending was missing. It doesn't matter a damn what a novel is about. The only writers left who have anything thing to say are those who write about practically nothing and monkey around with odd ways of doing it. And like we were talking about, there's the whole thing with the big sleep. Everyone's begging him, like, who killed the chauffeur? I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Leave me alone. So he didn't have plot, but what he had was style. Because he had such a strong literary background, Raymond was fond of simile and had a knack for evoking images.
A really good one, too. Like,
I've got a list coming up.
Oh, hit me with it.
This talent was heightened down even further by the word restrictions in the Pulp magazine. So he had been more...
he had to be tight.
He had to keep things so tight and concise and get his point across and phrase it perfectly.
Yeah.
All right, here's a long list, some of the best lines of his. From 30 feet away, she looked like a lot of class. From 10 feet away, she looked like something made up to be seen from 30 feet away. I'm an occasional drinker, the kind of guy who goes out for a beer and wakes up in Singapore with a full beard. Neither of the two people in the room paid any attention to the way I came in, although only one of them was dead. She smelled the way the Taj Mahal looks by moonlight.
That's pretty good.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I needed a drink. I needed a lot of life insurance. I needed a vacation. I needed a home in the country. What I had was a coat, a hat, and a gun. It was a blonde. This one's...
I love this one.
It was a blonde to make a bishop kick a hole in a stained glass window. If I had a razor, I'd cut your throat just to see what ran out of it. The English may not always be the best writers in the world, but they are incomparably the best dole writers. Those are all of his good lines. Those are the only good lines.
Yeah.
His writing was initially ignored by critics because of the genre he was working in, but by the mid-40s, they had picked up on what he was doing and he started getting some respect for it. The New Yorker said that he wrote as if pain hurt and life mattered.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. His second book it was 1940's Farewell, My Lovely, which came out at just the time when Hollywood started getting interested in detective stuff. So this was his first work that was eventually turned into an RKO movie in 1942 called The Falcon Takes Over. They renamed it, which I thought was a sequel to The Maltese Falcon. I would have loved that, but no.
I'm sure they thought we could trick people and make an extra $500 by people who are stupid.
It's the marketing that dreams are made of. He made $2,000 for selling a movie, but even more important, he was now in with Hollywood.
Yeah.
That same year, Fox paid him $3,500 for the rights to his book, The High Window, which they turned into the movie that I could have sworn was a James Bond movie, Time to Kill. Then in 1943, he got hired by Paramount to write scripts for them. His first job was working with Billy Wilder, writing the script for Double Indemnity, and he got paid $10,500, which was like 10 years worth of work for him before.
Yeah, I think he has a cameo in that movie, too.
He does. He's sitting in a chair outside of an office.
Yeah.
Raymond and Wilder did not get along at all, and the first draft by Raymond had a great mood, but it made no sense. So Wilder completely retooled it and made it work as a movie for which they were both nominated for an Oscar for this, but by then Raymond had long since dropped out of the project. This brings us to the kind of man Raymond Chandler was. He was shy. He was a shy guy, but he was also often incredibly cruel and rude to people. He hated most people and didn't have many friends. I feel like I'm both him and Ray Bradbury.
A good healthy mix of the two.
He didn't have many friends. He seemed fine with that also. One time an old man came up to him and told him he was a big fan of his and wanted to shake his hand, but Raymond said he didn't shake people's hand, which, hey, ahead of his time. And as the old man was walking away, he yelled, "Who's that old bastard? Imagine coming around here and making a nuisance of himself."
Oh my.
A guy who just wanted to tell him, "I like you." So mean. The reason he may have refused to shake hands, though, might have been that because he had really bad eczema on his hands. It was so bad that sometimes he had to wear gloves to type on the typewriter. Wow. He also constantly had bronchitis, rashes on his chest and neck that were sometimes so painful he had to take morphine for it.
Oh my God.
That
wasn't shingles?
It could have been.
Yeah.
It might have. He had I'm sure he also had shingles and still remnants of the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
He had sinus problems, a skin allergy that made his fingers split open. He also had shingles.
Oh my God. What a mess of a human.
Despite all that, he also cheated on Sissy constantly, and he saw himself as like a playboy, and I imagine he was wrapped up like the Invisible Man, like, women love me.
Just don't press on me too hard.
There are also rumors he was secretly gay. Which is interesting. The New York Times referred to his life as a nauseating gothic extravaganza.
Wow.
People are zinging each other left and right here. And he hated Hollywood so much. He didn't feel like he fit in. I wonder why. And he also resented it for making him question his abilities as a writer. He said, "If my books had been any worse, I should not have been invited to Hollywood. And if they had been any better, I should not have come." In Hollywood, they stick a knife in your back and then have you arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. He said the Oscars were Hollywood's exquisite attempt to kiss itself in the back of the neck. And this attitude stretched to his feelings towards Los Angeles as a whole.
Yeah.
He described it in ways that hadn't been done before in his books. This wasn't the beautiful sunny orange groves the boosters were selling. To him, Los Angeles was a dark, corrupt, and dirty city. His books had lines like, "I smelled Los Angeles before I got to it." In one, Marlowe lamented, "I used to like this town a long time ago. There were trees along Wilshire Boulevard. Beverly Hills was a country town. Westwood was bare hills and lots offering at $1,100 and no takers. Hollywood was a bunch of frame houses on the interurban line. Los Angeles was just a big, dry, sunny place with ugly homes and no style, but good-hearted and peaceful. People used to sleep out on their porches. Little groups who thought they were intellectuals used to call it the Athens of America. It wasn't that, but it wasn't a neon-lighted slum either." Very torn about the city.
Yeah.
Raymond himself said LA was a city with all the personality of a paper cup. But that disdain and his power with words created that iconic noir image of LA in the 30s and 40s that still holds today. And his stories went to a lot of trouble to include real places around the city. He mentions the 2nd Street Tunnel, the Hollywood and Central Library, Franklin Avenue.
All dramatic.
Yeah.
Maybe not Franklin Avenue, but all dramatic.
Nothing's more dramatic than Franklin. 6 feet from Franklin Avenue. Angel's Flight, Laurel Canyon, even the places he made up were based on real places in the city. Gray Lake was the Silver Lake Reservoir. Here we go. Bay City.
You constant reference point for you.
Yeah. Santa Monica was Bay City. Marlowe's office was in the Cahuenga building, which was actually the Security Trust and Savings building at Hollywood and Cahuenga, which is still there today.
Oh, wow.
And that's why that intersection is the Raymond Chandler Square. He had a complicated relationship with the city, but it made him what he was.
Yeah.
He ended up working on the scripts for And Now Tomorrow, The Unseen, and Strangers on a Train with Alfred Hitchcock, who he also hated and called a fat bastard, for which Alfred Hitchcock never forgave him, even though he based the movie Psycho on him. Hitchcock eventually threw out everything Raymond had done and started fresh with a new writer.
Wow.
The reason there was so much tension between him and directors was that he wanted complete control over his scripts, which he finally got when he was hired to write The Blue Dahlia. His demands before he got hired, he had to have 6 secretaries.
Oh, God.
2 Cadillac limos ready for him to use day or night, and he had to be able to work from home and be drunk while he did it, and for some reason the studio agreed. He was also nominated for an Oscar for this. He was nominated for 2 Oscars, Raymond Chandler.
Okay.
This didn't
Blue
win.
Dahlia? Not that great.
I can't imagine. This work made him very rich, as did his Philip Marlowe radio shows, several TV episodes. He wrote for the Schlitz Playhouse type of shows. He also had a Philip Marlowe TV show that ran from 1959 to 1960. Meanwhile, by 1949, he had sold over 3 million copies of his books. He was also growing as a writer. By the time The Long Goodbye came out in 1953, he was so sick of the Marlowe character, so he made him a more well-rounded and vulnerable person in this book just to try something different. In all, he only wrote 7 books and 25 short stories. He also wrote a paragraph-long parody of science fiction stories where he referred to a character who knew a lot of things, and the character's name was Google.
That's funny.
Yeah. In 1946, he left LA and moved to La Jolla, where he lived with Sissy until 1954 when she died, and that sent Raymond's life once again into a downward spiral.
Who am I going to cheat on now?
Where do I get the thrill of adultery? As not great as their relationship was, she was all he had, and now he had nobody except La Jolla. He started splitting his time between Southern California and England, where he would host a lot of parties in hopes of meeting girls. He said in the Artistic Society of London, about 1 man in 3 is homosexual, which is very hard on the ladies, but not at all hard on me.
There you go.
Yeah, as his nose fell off. But usually his personality would get the better of him at these parties. He'd just go into another room away from the party after a while and just let people do their thing in his house.
A very Philip Marlowe thing to do.
Yeah, his drinking got worse and worse. In 1955, he attempted suicide. I read 2 different stories about what happened. Either he tried shooting himself twice but missed and was about to try a 3rd time when the cops came in, or he was in his office and his secretary heard a gunshot, and when the cops came in, they found him standing in the bathtub with the curtains drawn and his head hanging down with the gun in his hand and a hole in the ceiling, just defeated. Either way, he went to a sanitarium after that.
That's another job he's not good at.
Well, fortunately. The best job he failed. He was so depressed towards the end of his life that he couldn't even look at the Pacific Ocean because it made him think about how many people had drowned in it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that is depression.
Yeah.
At the very end, he was elected president of the Mystery Writers of America, and he released his final book in 1958, Playback, which nobody likes. He had a lot of help in these later years from his agent, Helga Green, who got engaged a few months before Raymond Chandler died on March 26, 1959, of pneumonia in La Jolla, which is a title he would have hated, but a plot he would have loved. There were 17 people at his funeral. 17 people for Raymond Chandler.
Yeah.
And Helga Green then sued to get his fortune, which was $60,000. He left behind an unfinished book called Poodle Springs that was finished years later by Robert Parker.
Oh, wow, okay.
So Raymond Chandler left behind a legacy you cannot deny in his writing, which it should be mentioned was occasionally racist and usually sexist.
Yeah.
But the man himself didn't always see it that way. He ended up being respected by a lot of literary people in his lifetime, like T.S. Eliot and Evelyn Waugh, who was actually pen pals with him.
Oh, really?
But part of him hated his own books and resented his own supposed goal of elevating the genre and intellectualism in general. He was once asked if he wanted to win a Nobel Prize for his writing. He said, not if it takes too much hard work. But at the same time, he ferociously defended his work to anyone who said even something slightly mean about it. Like he would jump down their throat. He said being referred to as a crime writer was slightly below assault. But when asked why he doesn't write quote-unquote serious novels, he said, you cannot have art without a public taste, and you cannot have a public taste without a sense of style and quality through the social structure. It can exist in a savage and dirty age, but it cannot exist in the age of Milton Berle, Mary Margaret McBride, the Book of the Month Club, the Hearst Press, and the Coca-Cola machine, which I take to mean that he felt that even back then, who's to say what art is when what's popular would be considered trash to the art of an earlier time. So who's to say?
Yeah.
Like who are you to judge me? So along that line of thinking, he made literary pop into art like what Andy Warhol was doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Except not colorful, dark, very dark. He took the mystery and detective novel to a higher level, some say higher than Hammett ever did. That's why he was the first genre writer and the first writer from LA to be collected in the Library of America, and that's why he's considered to be, by many, to be the author of Los Angeles. Take that, everyone else we've talked about already.
Not Ray Bradbury.
Except for...
he used a typewriter.
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 He wrote on a typewriter. Reading about Raymond Chandler wanted to make me read more, because that's another author whose books are short enough and so interesting that like you could just tear through. And he only wrote 7 of them.
Yeah, and when I first started reading
it's like half of Moby Dick.
It's like 1/16 of Moby Dick. When I started reading them, I felt like I found what I've always been looking for, because I was reading literature at college, and they would weigh you down with such like big books.
Yeah,
that you're reading just like the description of clouds and what they meant to Margaret that day of her sister's wedding, and then you go to Raymond Chandler, like, boom, I'm tired, I don't want to go to bed, the phone rings, and I gotta get up.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's another thing. It's constant motion in a Raymond Chandler book. So he'll be like, exactly that. He's a whole day of doing this stuff. He goes home. There's someone waiting behind the door, and it starts all over again.
And then like you're 9 chapters in, and you're like, he hasn't slept.
No, he hasn't slept at all, and he's only had whiskey.
Yeah, he's only had whiskey and like water by accident.
Yeah, and an old he smelled an old hamburger. And that's
all the way over.
All of these, it made me want I want to reread Fahrenheit 451, but I want to read more Tarzan. I want to try the John Carter stuff.
Yeah,
and I want to find a Leigh Brackett book.
I'll lend you Big Jump, but I want to read her. She did a couple noir ones, and I'm really like the Long Tomorrow is an atomic destruction book. No Good for a Corpse is a noir book. I really want to jump into them.
Yeah, it got me going.
Good. You know, and now we have the time to read them.
Now we have time now. You know what you have time to do now? Leave us a review on iTunes.
You can leave us a couple because you have so much time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're just buying phones left and right. If you have an iPhone and you use iTunes, well, if you have an iPhone, you have to.
Yeah, they demand that you do.
So leave us a review, 5 stars, some words if you want. It's nice. Follow us on Twitter at LA Meekly, Instagram LA_Meekly. YouTube, you can listen to all this if that's how you prefer.
Or Spotify if that's easier for you.
Spotify. You can also, if you want to support us financially, on Patreon, we will send you coronavirus free, hopefully. Let them sit in your mailbox a little bit. A postcard for $5 a month. A postcard each month, handwritten by us. Or for less, you're just supporting us to keep this going, because we make no money from this.
We make so little money that we're in between 2 football games right now.
We're begging the government for a bailout.
Yeah,
and they won't give it. We'll also say your name at the top of an episode. So, how do you feel about recording outside in this horrible time? It
was hard to read my paper because it was flying all over the place. It's cold. I want to go home so bad.
Me too. I'm getting hungry, and it's scary because you can't really go anywhere. You can, but I'd rather not.
I go eat my stupid food that I have to make myself.
That's another thing. Everyone, be safe.
Please be safe.
And take this seriously also. Yeah. Like, by the time this comes out, I'm sure there will be stricter things. But, like, I've been thinking about, like, we're trying to think of other outbreaks in Los Angeles history, and we're living in it right now. Like, this is the history that yours and my incestuous great-grandkids will be talking about in 100 years. So be on the right side of history here, and don't get, we're being as far apart as we can. Mm-hmm. Don't get close to people. Don't go out. Don't be stupid.
Yeah, be responsible, because, like, you might not.
Exactly. I don't care. Like, if you're one of these people who makes me so angry, who are like, I'm young, old people can die. Like, first of
You're
all,
gonna-
who are you?
Yeah.
And you could die, but also, if you don't care, what if you give it to someone who gives it to someone who gives it to someone who gives it to my parents?
Exactly.
I'll never forgive you, and I'll know.
Yeah, you could be hurting someone down the line that you're not even aware of, and how do you not care about that? And this isn't something
It's
you could
crazy.
just walk off.
We're seeing so many sides of people right now, and it's shocking, but also there's a lot of good people.
I'm hoping that the enthusiasm that the people, because staying at home right now, there's like a camaraderie there, and I hope it doesn't turn nasty by the time this episode comes out.
Give it a few weeks. People are going to there's going to be someone running down the street naked. 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, there's going to be a murder. I know
for
it.
sure.
I know it.
We're getting there, but we'll get there when we get there.
And on that note,
stay
safe, everybody. We'll see you in May.
A lot of these books are available online through the library, so you can go ahead and read them digitally, or you can go on Audible, which I think it might be free right now. YouTube has I think The Little Sister, Lady by the Lake, animated. This guy did it on YouTube. It's really good. All this stuff. Go ahead, dig in.
No free plugs. So that's been yet another episode of L.A. Meekly, creating catchphrases since 2013.
What? Huh? What?
Have you been talking to me this whole time?